Hello, folks, and welcome to the Rangers Reviews Transfer Window Deadline Day show. We've got 3 hours of action ahead of us, so bear with us as we bring people in and out of the streams. We're starting off with me hosting, Jonny McFarlane, and I'm joined, I'm delighted to say, by Mr. Stevie Clifford. How are you doing, Stevie?
Evening, Jonny. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm good, mate. So I'm looking forward to the transfer window slamming shut.
We've got tons to talk about, Stevie. I don't know if we've got 3 hours to talk about, but listen, you're going away to America. There's loads of advice people can give. We can start talking about the great cities on the West Coast and all the things you can do. If it gets too depressing, then we can always just talk about something completely different. But
see, listen, to be fair, Jonny, this is a family holiday, and my wife's organised it, and I'm not even sure where we're going half the time. So I'm just there to do as I'm told and go along with it. So we can talk about it, absolutely, but I'm not sure it'll be factual, the information I'm giving you. Only know skeleton information. I know that on Sunday we're leaving after the Old Firm, and that's all I need to worry about.
That's all you need to know, Stevie. But at the end of the day, I think your adoring public will probably miss you as you're away for the next 21 days or whatever it is. So I thought it was important and pertinent to let people know that that's what's happening. You hadn't been, snatched by aliens or going off on a depressive, chaotic rant and being put in a cool room for 3 weeks. So, listen, we've got tons to get stuck into now. Chris Jack is coming on at 9:30. He's obviously just put out the story on the Herald that Ben Davies has been subject of a late transfer window bid. It's a loan bid, but do you know what? We're not going to go into detail on that. We've made you aware. Chris is going to talk about it in a bit of detail when he comes on at 9:30. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit more that we can get stuck into, but that's something there at least that is happening, that is moving, that is something that we can look at as the night goes on. Now, Stevie, we've both got our contacts, we've both been talking to people, and the general mood around Ibrox over the last 48 hours has been one of transfer tumbleweed. People at the club are saying nothing is happening. There is no movement. The Harry Souttar situation, which I think many of us were quite confident that there was something to that. That's kind of dissipated. It's kind of drifted away. And it seems like we're headed towards a transfer window that's going to slam shut with 9 new signings in. And the last one coming in, having been, was it Jose Cifuentes was the last one? Stevie, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's been a little while since that was secured. Now, of course, fantastic to get your work done early. But I think many of us were looking at how Rangers have started the season. They've been looking at performances, and I think especially around the defence. And Michael Beale himself said that Ryan Kent hasn't really been replaced, and that's something they're looking at, as well as a left central defender. Now, that's not been addressed. Where do you stand on that? Is this going to be a massive error if in the last 3 hours of the window Rangers don't move the secured players in one of these two positions?
Okay, so there's a lot to kind of unpack there, Jonny. I think, it's important. Right. First of all, we were asked at the start of the week, over the weekend, to find out the club's response to the Harry Souttar stories and anybody else coming in. So we asked the question, and as I reported here on Monday morning, the club have said, there's nothing happening, and it was all quiet. Later on in the day, several reports went out that the Harry Souttar deal might actually be happening, and that Ben Davies, is a little bit of a chain. If Ben was to go, maybe we'll look at Harry, etc., etc. So that's kind of made it a bit difficult, because, as Michael Beale said today, I think that this is where it becomes, you need to be flexible on what the club tell you, because sometimes the club can be completely honest and say absolutely nothing is happening with a certain deal or with a certain moment, but things can automatically change very quickly. So if something did happen in the last couple of hours, like, I've got no doubts that the reports that were put out, about that chain is pretty much true. And I've got no doubts that Rangers were looking at Harry Souttar or are a fan of Harry Souttar. I think that's all perfectly reasonable stuff, Jonny. But I also think it's perfectly reasonable and correct that when they say there's nothing happening with it, that is correct at the point where they give us that response, because there is nothing at the moment happening with that. But that doesn't mean it never will. And we've been there before with kind of transfers. And I think that becomes kind of problematic because people take things very literally in what you say, which makes it difficult. You know, Johnny, the amount of stuff we hear and we don't actually bother passing on because it's really difficult to not get caught in a kind of web of you want it to be as accurate as possible, but football changes so quickly.
Yeah.
So we've got that to realise. So at the moment, they are saying that there's nothing happening and all's pretty quiet. There's nothing happening at the training ground. So there's, at that moment, but the phone could go at any point, and tell us differently. So we just need to wait and see how that goes. On the transfers, on the 9 that's come in, I spoke to the manager today, Johnny, and asked him about a central defender because he has made that clear he wanted one. He said that they were extremely far down the line with a left-sided centre-back early on in the window. And it turned out that he went for too much money to the English Premiership and Rangers weren't prepared to pay that. Not that they couldn't, that they weren't prepared to. So that was clearly above their valuation that they felt. Didn't give us a name, and I was quite happy with that. I think we can all read between the lines. You're looking at maybe being the likes of Trusty and things who they were earlier in the window linked with that. So that's a possibility. Why they have felt that they can go without is on Michael Beale, I think. And it's possibly on the fact that maybe they haven't moved others out. John Souttar seems to be over his kind of injury problems in the eyes of the club, which again is a huge risk, but that's a position they're able to take. And they're happy with the Souttar-Goldson kind of combination. So that's on the manager. That's the manager's choice. He's decided to go with that. He explained that today. On a winger, he said he wanted a Ryan Kent replacement. I think we all remember him saying that. I think that's fair. And he said that he wanted I think he described it today as a dribbler. And he said on a dribbler, we were looking for it possibly of somebody that might come from within the squad or perhaps be available from the transfer. And he says that within the squad, we've got Rabi, who's came on. He's got the opportunity. Sakala have gone. So I get the impression that perhaps if Fashion Sakala had stayed, Rabi Matondo might have been the one that moved on. So maybe there's something in that theory. But I think that he then went on to say that Tom Lawrence could be ready and he wants to use Tom Lawrence as well, who's played predominantly kind of left side before he came as well. So there might be a wee bit of juggling about to do, but Michael Beale certainly feels that he's got enough in those positions. Now, listen, we can all disagree with that. I think we can all have our say and we can all say we would have liked to have another centre-back and I'd like to have another winger. And that brings me on to something I wrote about for Rangers Review a few weeks ago, Johnny, so we'll come to that in a wee minute if we can. But I think at the moment, we can all have, I think it's fair to say we all would have wanted another centre-back and maybe a winger. But this revamp was so big that obviously we're going to be disappointed. And the other thing is as well, perhaps Michael Beale's looked at it, and I get the impression from some things that he said today and has said previously that he thinks at 9 is where we want to be. And really, on that, we should just be giving them a lot of time to maybe settle in. So there's a lot to unpack in it. There's a lot of kind of opinions, and we've had a lot to say this week as a fan base and things like that. So it's just one of those things. We need to see how it goes. And Michael Beale will be judged on what he's done. I've always said throughout this summer that where he's spent money is going to be where he's judged. He's not going to be judged on Jack Butland or Kieran Dowell or Dujon Sterling, who's come in for free. It'll be the big money signings, and that's what people are judging on him right now. So we just need to wait and see how this is going to pan out. I think he's made a bit of a bold move in not bringing these players in. But at the same time, Johnny, it's September. January's not that far away. So if things, if we did need players to come in, we've got another few months to look at that situation. Financial fair play kind of situation. I know it's changed slightly, and I know that's not the term anymore, but we've recouped almost what we've spent this summer. So we should be in a position, I would think, if necessary, to go and spend in January. And I'm not talking about 5-6 million. I'm talking about if there's a reasonable player out there we can go and get. So these are wee factors in that I think are positives from what we've done in the summer. But overall, this is what I was wanting to say, Johnny, before I go on. Everybody will remember on the Rangers review, I said this was a 9 out of 10 summer in terms of positions and recruitment on paper. I think that's really important because a few people have flagged this up to me this week, and obviously after a big defeat, that can look pretty bad. I still think that we've got the positions we needed, and I still think we've filled them with the exception of a centre-back. A winger, that'll be decided, I think, in the weeks to come, so we'll need to wait and see what happens with that. But I don't see my opinion on that changing. I think they need time to settle in. Some have started better than others haven't. So it's just one of those things. I think,
Stevie, what I would say is a lot of this depends on Danilo. And we simply haven't seen enough of Danilo to make any kind of accurate assessment as to what kind of player he is, how he'll fit in, and if he can adapt to Scottish football on the basis of the tiny sample size that we've actually seen. It is a little bit confusing that Rangers would splash out a significant amount of money for a player who's clearly got a very good pedigree in the Dutch league and then keep him on the bench. Now, it'd be a bit more understandable if Danilo hadn't been kind of fit and ready to go, but by all accounts, he was in a reasonable situation when he appeared at the club. He was flung straight in to a debut very, very quickly after arriving off the bench. So he must be in reasonable condition. And if Danilo turns out to be a top-class striker, I think from what we've seen from the summer recruits, already you can see that most of them have got something about them. But for me, the big one is Danilo, because he's the guy you're expecting to give you that lightning, that electricity up front, to score the goals, to give you something creatively that Rangers have at times lacked over the last few years. Unfortunately, that's not happened so far. Do you see him as a bit of a conundrum so far, or do you understand what's happening there?
Sorry, I was just getting a text there, and it's probably worth sharing.
Okay.
Unless the phone rings in the next 2 hours, it's done. So that's exactly where we are from a club point of view. So sorry to kind of be looking at my phone and things. I'm trying to...
No, we're going to be doing that throughout the night, Stevie.
There's possibly some news coming with a couple of younger players getting a chance to move and kick on with their careers. But aside of that, unless the phone rings, it is what it is. So on Danilo, interesting. A lot of people had been saying to me, a pertinent question to ask Michael Beale today was, why have we spent so much money on this guy and pursued him all summer? And that's all totally fair for him not to start games. And I think that's all really fair. I think that's fair questions. And you know as well as I do, Johnny, that in a press conference, you don't get 8 questions. And we probably could have asked 30 today. So
yeah,
we had 2 to ask. And normally 1 or 2 is what you get. I chose not to ask on Danilo because I think the Danilo question, if Danilo doesn't start and play on Sunday, I think that's more of a pertinent question there. Because I think if Kamar Roof, for example, comes in and starts on Sunday and Danilo doesn't see game time, I think now we're then entitled to go, right, Michael, you spent £6 million on this boy. Although Michael Beale said it's a bit less than that, isn't it? So you've spent, say whatever you've spent on him. We pursued him for a long time. He's not getting game time. Is there an issue there? Maybe he's not up to fitness yet. Is there, does he have to change? But I would be surprised if we don't see him on Sunday. I think that Dessers, I think he's struggled because he's not got the right kind of feed of the ball and things as well. So and I don't think he's done enough. I don't want to go down the route of completely criticising him or rubbishing him. I don't think that's right. I just think at times we've seen some good things, but it's not been sustained enough. So I think maybe for his sake, perhaps Danilo coming in, that kind of, I want to say sharpness, but have we really seen that from him? I'm not sure. But I think that he's come in and is more of a favourite already than Dessers, if that makes sense. The Brazilian kind of fast-footed kind of thing. He scored a couple of goals, the header at home to Livy and stuff like that. So, listen, I think that for some reason he's kind of got a following quicker. So, I would be surprised, Johnny, if he doesn't see game time. But I think the question, from the supporters that have been saying online, why don't we ask this and stuff? I think that's good questions, and I think that they're all kind of pertinent things to ask. But I think Sunday's definitely the one to ask about Danilo if we don't see him then. And I would think as well, after the international break, maybe he's just taking a wee bit more time to bed in, or maybe it's personal choice by Michael Beale. So it's just one to watch. I still think he'll be absolutely fine. I've seen enough in glimpses of him to think that when he settles and gets his form, he'll be absolutely fine for Rangers. And I still think he'll score 20 plus goals. I'm not ruling Dessers out either. He's going to need time. I keep thinking about what Ronald de Boer said about Dessers, Johnny. When he's bad, and he looks like the worst player in the world. When he's good, he looks like the best player in the world. And it's getting him into that form. I don't think we've got him there yet. I don't think we're serving him the ball properly. You seen it midweek, he was miles away from the midfield and the strikers. They were miles away from each other. So I think that's things we need to rectify and things that will hopefully come. But you as well as I know, Johnny, that on Sunday, if he was to belt one in, the whole opinion would change on him as well. So,
of course. This is a long-term problem, Stevie. That's the other thing I want to say. Alfredo, for all his faults, when he was at his best, was doing the job of 3 or 4 men up there. He was creating for himself, causing massive problems for teams on his own. In many ways, his qualities, his kind of Tasmanian devil, bull in a china shop, rampaging around, basically keeping 3 or 4 defenders occupied, that was masking this problem that Rangers have had for a long time. Because whenever you didn't have Alfredo there, it just wasn't quite that same connection between the midfield and the strikers. Remember, Michael Beale was a big part of the team that went and sort of pushed 2 wide 10s up when Morelos was suspended for a while alongside Defoe, so they could get that level of connection between the striker and attacking midfield players. And sometimes I think there's still that problem with this Rangers side. It's a sort of fundamental problem with the shape or with the tactics. But you have to hope with the quality of players like Cifuentes, with players like Todd Cantwell, players like Nico Raskin that are now in the building, once it comes together, it is more promising. It is more promising on paper than it has been in the past. So I think we can take that away. A couple of things, Stevie, I just want to add as well. I spoke to someone at Rangers today, and I was talking about the comment that Michael Beale said about equalising out the budgets. And you touched on it, saying that Michael Beale was talking about Danilo not being as much as the 6 million that was quoted. And I think just speaking to people at Rangers, generally they feel that about a lot of transfer fees. Now, I was told today that Rangers have got a net spend of £5 million in this transfer window, and that will be backed up in the accounts when they come out. I've got that from a very good source. I absolutely believe it, because if the person's lying to me, like I say, it will show up in the accounts. So it's not one of these ones that I think I could have been sold down the river on. I do believe that. So I think there's been a bit more money spent than has been brought in, and some of that is this undisclosed fees, and then maybe people not getting quite the right fees. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I think that's all. Look, I think that's perfectly logical, because Jack Butland might have been free, but he isn't actually free. That's the thing. If you think about it, by the time we pay an agent's fee, by the time we pay a signing on bonus and all that kind of stuff. I remember Stuart Robertson, did he not famously say that Joe Rebo actually cost Rangers £2 million, even though it was only a £300,000 kind of cross-border thing? Yeah. So there's fees that we don't see and we don't think about as a support. So I think that's all perfectly fair and logical. And I think if we've spent £5 million this summer, I'm more inclined to believe that that's good business by the club. Ultimately, at the moment, Johnny, we're in a position, especially online, when everybody's upset at what went on the other night. And I think that people need to remember as well that when they talk to us, when they talk to me, 4 lads, Rangers Review and stuff like that. I'm a Rangers fan, Johnny. I've had a season ticket for 30 years, mate. You know me. And, I feel it. Like, I hurt as much as anybody else does. I get angry as much as everybody else does.
More than anyone I know.
Yeah, I mean, God, you've seen me, mate. You've seen me sitting fuming and everything else and having to kind of articulate the questions and all that kind of stuff. But, I think that sometimes that's forgot when, people see us as just kind of, an avenue to ask the questions, which I understand. But I think that people don't realise that, sitting in Eindhoven Stadium on midweek, that was as hurtful for me as it was for every single other person. It actually helped that I was in hospitality and 10 pints in at the time, but it certainly made it a better way to watch football. So that helped slightly, but it's as devastating for me as it is for anybody else watching. So I want to see this team click. I want to see, and look, naturally, I think the problem for me is that I'm positive. So I've been kind of positive about our signings. I'm positive about Michael Beale. I'm positive about what we're trying to do. And that's the way I am, Johnny. But it doesn't mean that I'm completely blind to what people are saying and the things about the shape, about the formation and stuff like that. I see that, I understand the kind of points that people are making. So I just don't want to get in another position where, everything's negative and you're kind of arguing against and all that kind of stuff. I'm just hoping and I'm willing to give it time because this has been such a big revamp and rebuild. And I still remain positive over this. And I know that people will say, how can you possibly be positive? But I think that we've seen some things that are good and some things that are bad. I get it completely. So that's Mrs. Clifford walking by there. She's packing the bags in the other room, so she said she was going to have to sneak in. So that was her attempt to hide her face with her mobile phone there.
Super fast. Like a phantom in the background there. I hope not the phantom written up.
No, she's certainly not the phantom on Twitter. So, or I hope she's not. I would explain why he gives me so much pelters, to be fair, though.
Listen, just a little bit of news. Again, Chris has broken the story just in the last 2 minutes while we've been online, Stevie, that James Blair has left the club. Another big move behind the scenes, I think. But listen, we'll get Chris on at 9:30, which is only 8 minutes away now. So, and he can kind of explain the story in a bit more detail. But another wee kind of tidbit, a news story from behind the scenes breaking as we've been on air. I don't want to derail us from the transfer talk, though, Stevie, because I think that's why a lot of people will be watching. And as the night goes on, we can get delved into other issues. But a couple of questions from the guys, and I think quite interesting ones. One from Skylarker. He's saying, really surprised Scott Wright hasn't got a move. I know he didn't fancy Turkey, but he clearly wants more regular football and seemed open to the right offer. My understanding is that Scott Wright was open to an offer, but it had to be the right one. And that Turkish club, I think when he went out there and he saw the scale of it, it's a very, very small scale club. St Johnstone dwarfed them in terms of the size of the stadium, etc., etc. I just don't think he fancied it. I don't think the Saudi Arabia thing was ever truly real. So Scott Wright's in a situation whereby he's probably going to be sticking around in the squad. Now, listen, you've been a supporter of Scott Wright's quite unashamedly. It's sort of become a bit of a meme, but I totally understand why. I really like him as a player. I think no one watching this will say Scott Wright is a bad player because he is a good player. It's just that for Scott Wright, finding the consistent level that you'd need to reach to be a proper Rangers player, first name on the team sheet, he just hasn't quite found that yet. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's fair to say that I am a huge Scott Wright fan, and it has become a bit of a kind of ongoing kind of joke online and things like that. But that's why I was laughing there. I think it's funny that he's kind of managed to cling on to the window and he's still here because everybody was like basically chasing him out the door and he's managed to survive it. And I seen a thing on social media this morning, and it was the guys, they're sitting at the table and they're opening the drinks and they're like, look at us, who would have believed this kind of thing? And it was the caption was Ben Davies and Scott Wright at the end of the transfer window at Rangers. So I think it's a guy that plays Ant-Man in that, isn't it? So it's him. It's that actor sitting at the table. That's it. That's his name. So I was just like that came into my head as I was talking about that. Look, Scott Wright. I think it's fair to say when Scott Wright came in and we were chasing 55, he had a really positive impact, and he was something a bit different. And we all thought or hoped that he would kick on. And what's happened is he hasn't kicked on at all. And under Giovanni van Bronckhorst, he kind of petered out. And then in the European run, he kind of raised right up again as well. Remember, he started in the semi-final. He started in Seville. So there's obviously something there. But I think the issue is that he's got to a point, went down, maybe came back to that point, but he's never really stayed there or he's never really improved beyond where we really need him to go as a player. So, yeah, I mean, I think if Rangers could have got money for Scott Wright or could have put him out, then I think they would have. But I also don't think Scott Wright's on a lot of money. I don't think he's a high kind of problematic player that demands game time and stuff like that. I think he's really happy to be at Rangers and really happy to work and kind of, be behind the scenes and wait for an opportunity. He'll want first team football, obviously, but he'll believe that he can get an opportunity, especially with Europe and things like that. So, if he does get an opportunity, it's up to him to take it. But look how quickly football can change. And I'm not talking just about Scott Wright. I just mean in general. If Rabbi Matondo's taught us anything, it is that we need to be patient with our players, and things can change automatically really quickly because, Sunday's such a huge opportunity for these new players. If somebody lashes in a 20-yard winner, they're going to become a hero instantly, and their whole Rangers career changes, their whole confidence changes. And look what confidence can do to Rabbi Matondo, for example. Look at that run midweek. He goes past 4 and then hits outside the post. It would have been a wonder goal. And he's produced those moments. And you're going into games now, you're going into Sunday, and who's your exciting outball? It's Rabbi Matondo. So things can change quickly. And I'm not necessarily saying it's going to happen for Scott Wright. I'm just saying that we need to be a wee bit more open-minded with the players and the signings and stuff like that, and not be quick to kind of write them off. And I've been there, and I've said this all summer. I'm the world's worst for doing snap judgments and kind of doing that. So I just need to, what I'm trying to do is give them time to perhaps be there, because I don't need another situation where I'm saying, well, I was completely wrong about that guy. So let's give them time and see what happens with it.
Yeah, and listen, Michael Beale's kind of, I can't really talk about what Michael Beale was saying, but I was in the sort of Sunday papers interview with Beale today, and I think he was making a point about it taking time for players to bed in, and it not just happening with a click of the fingers. One guy's from Serie A, one guy's coming from the MLS, one guy's coming from different people coming from all different necks of the wood. One guy coming from English football, etc., etc. So they come to Scotland. It's a totally different type of game. You tell them that we're playing Kilmarnock in the first game of the season, and they look at the plastic pitch that hasn't been watered, and they wonder what the hell they've let themselves in for. That's me adding that, by the way. That wasn't what Beale said, but it is a difficult, idiosyncratic game that we have here, and it is always going to take them a little bit of time to get used to it. I just feel, Stevie, and perhaps we were guilty of this a little bit ourselves here at the Rangers Review on these shows, is probably not taking into account that, look, 9 new faces, it was always going to take a bit of time. Now, the retort that I've had on Twitter, and I've not had anything like what it sounds like you've had over the last week, but the retort I've had is, well, look, listen, only 3 new faces started that game against PSV. But I would say John Souttar is a new face. He's not used to playing alongside Connor Goldson in that back line. Jack Butland's obviously new. Todd Cantwell and Nico Raskin haven't been in the club for an awful long time. It's 6 months, 7 months. A big part of that's the summer. And then you're talking about guys who maybe haven't built up any kind of relationship up front. We know that strike partnerships, whether it be a 3 or a 2, it's all about relationships, and it's all about having that spark and that chemistry. I mean, crikey, we know that. Those of us that follow Glasgow Rangers know more than anything else that, because you've seen that all throughout the time that you've been watching the club. You think back to Mark Hateley and Ali McCoist, and just that instant spark of chemistry they had. Before them, Maurice Johnson and McCoist. Later on, as time's gone on with other partnerships, there's always been, in the successful Rangers times, besides that attacking chemistry, and I just don't think it appears out of nowhere. And it's not like, say, for example, you go out and you sign a player and you add them to a 3, and 2 players that have already got a relationship, and you're adding another one in. That's easier. But to pull 3 or 4 players and throw them together, and you're not quite sure how it's going to blend, I think that's part of the problem. Is Michael Beale might be looking at this going, I'm not quite sure who will complement who 100% perfectly. Certainly looks to me like Danilo and Dessers were a big part as a pair of Beale's thinking. But then you've got Sima and you've got Matondo, and how do these elements added to the mix change things up for certain games? Because you're also going to want to have a little bit of pace. Of course, against Celtic, you want to have a bit of pace because there's going to be times when you're in your own half and you've got space to spring into, and I think Rangers can make a lot of that actually in this game on Sunday that's coming up. Listen, I've got another comment here from David Aitken. I think it's important again on transfers. Good evening, guys. He's asking about Leon King. He might go out on loan somewhere. Now, I was told earlier in the week that Leon King is unlikely to move in this window, and I don't know what you've heard, Stevie. I think there's obviously interest from League One clubs, but my understanding, and I'm certain that Euan will be able to update us on this as time goes on, is that Leon King isn't likely to move anywhere. Just as I pose you that question, I'm going to bring in Chris Jack, who's just arrived in the stream. He's looking dapper and per drink as ever, so I'm just going to bring him in. There you go, Chris. How you doing?
Not too bad, gents. How are we?
There not bad. The proper goat has arrived, Johnny.
Yes. The Rangers Fabrizio Romano is here. Now, listen, I'm going to get Stevie's reaction to that question I've just posed to him about Leon King.
That's my nickname. He's not having my nickname.
Oh, well, apologies. I forget these things. I didn't know you'd be precious about that, but I'll let you away with it. Now, before we get into Chrissy's...
Sorry, John, I said the last time I heard Fabrizio wears Stevie Clifford pyjamas.
Listen, before we get into Chrissy's two stories tonight, Stevie, answer me that on Leon King. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I seen Leon King leave the training ground this afternoon just at the back of 4, so he was heading home, and I don't see him going anywhere. I think in long term, I think a loan like Alex Lowry has managed to secure would be a very good move for Leon King. But you know, as we've heard, unless that phone rings in the next kind of 90 minutes, nothing's happening towards the end of this window. So I think it would be a good move for him. I think we've got enough cover without him being there, or certainly we could maybe put him out with the option of bringing him back in January. But I think it would be a positive move for Leon to get some first team action, just like just like Alex Lowry has got. So I'm not completely against that, but I think, you know, Chris had that story during the week. There was certainly interest from England and stuff like that, and I think that's, you know, at the time we thought it was maybe possible, but you know, that's the thing as well, Johnny. I think we've called a lot of these deals. Like I remember Chris spoke about Sam Lammers on. I think Chris broke that story on the Friday. I confirmed it maybe a couple of days later, and it was the end of the following week when he arrived, and that gives you a kind of timeline of how long these things take. So with Leon's interest maybe only coming a couple of days ago, as Chris kind of broke, it doesn't leave a lot of time for these things to be done, and Rangers will want certain kind of guarantees if we're putting players out on loan. Other clubs then, you know, they have to come back, and they maybe come back and argue it a wee bit, and then it goes back and forward. It's not all as straightforward as, can we sign Ben Davies? We'll give you 2 million. No, we want 2.5. Right, we'll give you 2.25. Okay, no problem. And it all gets done in 15 minutes. It's not like that. So I think that the kind of deals that we've talked about this summer, Chris, can I give you a timeline of how long it takes?
And that's why when it comes to deadline day and people get quite upset when there's nothing happening, as you say, Steve, it does take time to put these things together. And if you are a club that's having to go and sign a couple of players on deadline day, it suggests that your recruitment earlier in the window has not been up to scratch. I know Rangers have taken a bit of stick among some of the fans for not doing anything on deadline day, but they did do 9 deals earlier on in the window. That was the way the manager wanted it. The investment was put into the squad from the board earlier in the summer because that's how the manager wanted it. He didn't want to wait to see how the Champions League campaign unfolded and then maybe spend a bit more money. He wanted the squad in because he believed that in the longer term, going through the season, having these guys in early will be advantageous to him. So he's been backed. I think the net spend, as it stands, is around the £5 million mark. There's obviously money to come in from a lot of the transfers as well. I think the business they've done going out the way, the point I made to Derek this morning, if somebody said to you 10 weeks or so ago, you'll get 5 for Kamara, 4 for Cholak, or 4 for Sakala, sorry, you'll make your money back on Cholak, and you'll bring the average age of the squad down, bring the number of the squad down, you would say it's been a successful window. Rangers were 90 minutes away from, if they beat PSV, I know it's a big if they'd beaten PSV, nobody would have been complaining about the transfer window. So I think the squad and the manager do need time to try and get it right. But of course, come back to us on Monday morning after an Old Firm game, and we'll see if that's true or not.
Yeah. Chris, there's been quite a big reaction to your arrival, so I'm going to give you some of the best comments to make you both laugh. Big Harry Cock is saying, Chris Jack looks like he's ready to hit a 147. Saying you're looking like a snooker player there, mate. Davy Fulton says, is Chris out in the town as soon as the window shuts?
If there's a man that's due a beer after this transfer window, it's me.
Chris Redhand says, Chris Jack, the bearer of bad news. They're obviously expecting some negativity from you, Chris, today. And then the Rangers Grouch says, Chris Jack, live from the Crucible. So there you go. Now, listen, Chris.
I thought it was more a Walter cardigan than a snooker player cardigan, but obviously not.
Someone else did say that, but I couldn't find that comment. I was going to flash that. But listen, it's great to have you on, mate, and I think you've got 2 stories today. So let's go into them. First of all, the Ben Davies situation. Could you elaborate a little bit on that offer that has been made to Rangers this sort of late on tonight, and where that stands at the moment?
I think it's been something that it sounds like it's been rumbling on for the last few days, maybe the last couple of weeks. There's obviously been a lot of discussion over Ben Davies over the course of the summer. I think he's a player the fans, or a lot of the fans, would have been quite happy to see him move on, because it would have freed up a wage, but it freed up a place in that defence. I think while the defensive numbers are there, it became very, very difficult to see how Rangers were ever going to go and sign another one. And I think Davies has been seen as the expendable one of the centre back options. Alex Neil also worked with him at Preston, big fan of him, would like to work with him again. At Stoke, a loan offer was made, loan offer was rejected. It just didn't match the numbers that Rangers were looking for. And we now get to 9:30 at night. The last update I had on it was half an hour or so ago. And I think it's safe to say that was not happening. That deal's dead. It's not going to go through. So Rangers won't be losing a centre half. Rangers won't be signing a centre half. There may still be a bit of action in terms of some of the B team guys going out on loan, but certainly nothing major. That basically just confirms what we've been saying over the last week or so, probably even longer than that. And certainly over the course of today, and what the manager backed up at his press conference earlier on. So I apologise to the fans for breaking that bad news this morning that there was nothing doing. I did say if something happened late on, don't shout at me. I was merely the messenger. But with a couple of hours to go, I think we're fairly safe to say that Rangers won't be doing anything else in or out tonight.
So you have been the bearer of bad news then. But listen, let's jump on to another story that you've got there, just going out on the Herald, about the departure of another major player behind the scenes.
Yes, James Blair has left his position as Rangers Company Secretary. As I say in that piece, there's been quite a lot of changes behind the scenes over the course of the last 3-4 months, or longer than that, since John Bennett came in as chairman. That's obviously the most significant. We've then also seen James Bisgrove replace Stuart Robertson and be appointed as Chief Executive Officer. And there's been a wide range of moves behind the scenes in the last wee while. Also had the Ross Wilson departure as well. So I think it's probably no surprise that James has now moved on. He's perhaps not as high profile as some other characters, not that they were, but some of the other figures at the club. But he's been there a long time, been through a lot of the highs and lows since regime change came in just after Dave King, John Gilligan and Paul Murray came in. So someone who's been a familiar face around the club for a long time, but he has now left. It just kind of feeds into this kind of feeling of Rangers going in a different direction, a different vibe on the park in terms of the manager and what he's trying to build, and something a bit different off the park in terms of John Bennett and James Bisgrove really leading that charge, with James Taylor coming in last week, Graham Van Aken coming in, and Craig Robertson's promotion over the last couple of weeks and months as well. So plenty going on, plenty to keep us going, and I'm sure there's more to come, because as we know, it's never dull.
Chris, you not have James Blair's stats for us? Joshua, if he was on, would be able to say 12 court cases, 2 victories, 8 defeats, and 2 draws. Like, so have you not got that information for us?
I'm going to wait for the boys that are on later on. That I can see them I can see the guys through the graveyard shift later on when it's official that there's nothing happening transfer-wise. Josh can be digging out those stats and get a couple of pie charts and graphs and stuff pulled together.
To be fair, Johnny, you had a story on that earlier, didn't you?
He's leading with the win. That's how you do
it. How do you link that? That was amazing, wasn't it? So,
yes, no. Rangers have been victorious in a court case with Kyle Fox's KRF Capital. She's been looking for damages over a previous lawsuit that Rangers had actually dropped. Surrounding the it's a complicated tale about a dossier that was put out that came into the hands of some Rangers directors where she'd been looking to raise some capital in the club to try and invest in it. Basically, she had then looked to sue Rangers for the legal fees that she had, but that's been thrown out, and the judge's ruling, which I've got here, 13 pages of it, quite complex stuff to be going through late on a Friday night, let me tell you. But the gist of it was pretty damning in terms of the way he rejected her case. So a good wee win there for Rangers on a legal case, and James Blair goes out the door with his head held high and a victory in his pocket. But listen, guys, I want to ask you, because as Chris rightly points out, we might be going into that in a bit more detail later on. The big story tonight is not Rangers, but just, guys, let us talk about it for 5 minutes, because it is absolutely incredible, and it just shows you what is happening at elite football at the moment. Mohamed Salah, a £200 million bid for Saudi, £2 million a week. Stevie, what do you make of an offer like that? I mean, if you're Liverpool, how can you turn that down for a 31-year-old with less than 2 years to go on his contract?
Yeah, incredible offer. The thing is, I think a club like Liverpool can turn it down because they're cash rich, and they clearly see him as being worth more than, or more vital than that. I think, when you start chucking about that kind of money, you should snap your hand off it, But the English Premiership, I think, have got a real challenge for their kind of superiority in terms of money and wages and that are kind of been able to be flung about. I know the English Premiership, as far as I know, last time I looked, is still outspending the Saudi leagues and stuff, but I don't see that lasting much longer. And the thing is, when you can offer the kind of money that they can offer, £200,000 tax free and stuff like that per week, I think that becomes hugely attractive. So it's certainly an interesting offer. I must admit, who was it that I seen talk about it? There was an ex-Liverpool player this week who said that he expected him to be gone this week. So I seen that on Twitter. Was it somebody random, like it was Jan Bjorn? Who was it?
I know.
What I mean, like
Jan Agi Fjortov.
That's who it was. Yeah, that's who it was. So that was interesting. And then when I seen they turned down that bid, for somebody of that age, because realistically, what are you looking at for a player like 31-year-old? You're thinking maybe 33, 34. Does he begin to kind of come down? So you're 2 more years for that kind of money.
He's already on the downslope. He's already.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. He's still a quality player. He'll still hit 25 goals for Liverpool this year, and he's still an incredible talent. But
but he's not better than he was 2 years ago.
No, he's not. No, absolutely not. But I think Liverpool have probably just looked at it and decided that he's probably worth more staying than he is letting go, because they earn and turn over so much with TV revenue and everything else as well. So yeah, I would love to be in the position where we are turning down kind of money, even a fraction of that, for players, to be honest.
Chris, if Steven Gerrard's Al Ittihad came in with a £25 million offer for James Tavernier, where they were paying him $300,000 a week, even at this late stage in the transfer window, would you be turning it down?
If I was Tav or if I was a Rangers board, because the answer's the same for both of them. No, you wouldn't be turning it down. But as Stevie said, the money on offer from Saudi is changing the landscape of the game in the way that the Premier League has done for so long. But these figures and these types of salaries and fees are taking it to a different level. Not a market that Rangers have to compete with, thankfully. And you almost just have to laugh it off and say, well, that's a world that's completely out with our realms of reality. If these guys want to spend their money in such a way, then fair play to them. But now we've got more important matters and more sensible matters to be worrying about back here, thankfully, because it's completely out with our realms of reality.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite startling that is the situation. A nice little question here, actually, that we can get our teeth into. Andrew Stewart's asking, guys, what are your thoughts on the director of football? I'm guessing we're waiting for the window to shut before we maybe appoint someone. I feel the club has to appoint a director of football. I'm just going to jump in there and say I totally agree with Andrew. I think there needs to be someone in place if it goes wrong for a manager. There's someone there who can pick up the pieces and has planning in place to take over very, very quickly. I think it's too much to ask one guy to be across recruitment, to be across youth football, to be across women's football and pull it all together if you're a traditional manager. Now, I know Michael Beale doesn't have that remit, but I think it makes sense to have a guy in there. Now, I'm not sure the club feels the same way on that. Stevie, first of all, what's your take? Where are you on the potential for a director of football or a sporting director, however you want to call it?
Johnny, see, to be honest, I've finished my diluting orange, and the most pertinent question for me at this moment in time is, do I ask Karen, my wonderful wife, to go and get me another drink and risk the wrath of that happening live on Rangers Review, or simply
Stevie,
just try and...
Do you know what? Do you know what you can do? I'll ask Chris that question. You can go and take a wee walk and get yourself a drink if you want. You can come back just in time to give your verdict on this question.
That'd be nice. I do feel a wee bit parched. So thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, boss. I'll be back in a minute.
I don't want to see you sweating unduly, pal. So, Chris, what was your take on that?
I'm going to provide a really short answer, so Stevie has to run down the stairs and get back.
Take your time. Take your time.
In terms of whether I think Rangers should have a director of football, I think it's yes. But I think if they do go down that road again, I wouldn't be surprised if the remit of it changes slightly. I don't think you'll see if there is someone comes in to fill that role, no matter what it's titled, I don't think that you'll see them have as much control over the recruitment side of it as has previously been the case. I think in practice, a director of football should work. I think it's a solid and proper way of working, certainly in the modern game. I think if Rangers want to be progressive and on the front foot, I think it's something that they should have. But like every appointment or like every signing, whether you're appointing a manager, a director of football, whether you're signing a right back or a goal scorer, if you get the wrong person in that role, it doesn't matter how good the theory is or how good the blueprint is. If you have the wrong person that doesn't do a job how you see it and how you want it to go, then it doesn't work. And I think you could make the case for all the people that Rangers have had in that role in the last couple of seasons. It's not really worked out. And you talk about director of football being long-term planning. Rangers almost planning between directors of football, because they had, Frank McFarlane came in heavily involved in recruitment, didn't work out. You then rip it up and start again. Mark Allen comes in, he then leaves, you rip it up and start again. Ross Wilson comes in, and you're doing that almost as often as you're doing the managerial changes. So I think if you are going to go down that route, you have to be sure that the guy you're getting in is going to be here for 5, 7, 10 years, and there is actually succession planning and long-term planning and really shaping the football club how you want it to be shaped. Yeah. So I think Rangers will go down that road again, but I know we spoke to James Bisgrove about it at the launch of the museum 3 weeks ago now, maybe.
Yeah.
And he said, look, don't be surprised. One of the options on the table is we just stick with what we've got, we just stick with the status quo. Now that I know they have been speaking to people, they're sounding people out, they're going through the right process in terms of doing everything they can. So if they do decide to appoint somebody, they've done as much homework on it as possible. But don't be surprised if the board meet and decide, look, this is how we're going to go. We're actually just going to stick with status quo in the structure that we've got for now. So I think it's interesting to see how that develops over the next couple of weeks and couple of months.
Stevie, I totally agree with that. What Chris has said there about how it's potentially going to pan out. Here's a suggestion. I also agree with what Chris is saying about it being ripped up at the same rate as managers. Why not appoint a director of football or a sporting director whose remit doesn't include recruitment? So put the recruitment under the remit of the manager. Everything else goes up under the director of football. And then the director of football is able to get on with the job, knowing that the first team isn't, with everyone knowing that the first team isn't really his responsibility. And therefore it can be a long-term appointment without the problem of the fans turning on him as well as the manager when things go wrong.
When do the fans ever turn on the director of football?
Listen,
I feel attacked there a wee bit. Like, what are you trying to say?
I'm not that clever, but if I was...
Well, interestingly, I've always felt that the manager should decide who we're signing. I think that's always where it should be. There should obviously be a little bit of a committee where, the director of football has a say in things like that, but it should ultimately be the manager's choice. It should be the manager that identifies who he wants to watch and who we want to sign in. The director of football is there to kind of implement and make sure these deals are done and things like that. But it could be an interesting idea. I don't know if that's the difference between like a kind of sporting director and a director of football as such in the titles, and is there less responsibility in that side of things. So, what I will say is that Michael Beale wanted it this way. He wanted the responsibility for the signings. He wanted to be completely in control. Well, he is. So he will live and die by that. And it goes back to what I said right at the very top of this show, Johnny, and I've said all summer, that it's not the free transfers, it's not the small gambles that he will be judged on. It's Cyril Dessers, Danilo, Sam Lammers. And the reason why he's getting so much criticism of his transfer in the summer is because they have yet to hit the ground running. So, if a director of football was there, would he be getting the burden of it as well? Most likely. So, look, Rangers fans are really demanding. We're really kind of high expectations. And when you get a result in midweek, it's a bit of a scattergun approach to everyone. So I think things will settle down, hopefully. Come Sunday night, the kind of atmosphere can be a lot different towards the signings. As I said to you, all it takes is Dessers to head one in, Danilo to get one off the bench, something like that for these guys to really kick on and start firing. So the director of football one's an interesting one. It would depend also, I think, on the calibre of person you could bring in for me to really decide if I wanted that position filled. But at the moment, it is a bit of a kind of, let's just see how things pan out before we make any more kind of moves on it.
Chris, I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Just a couple of things. First of all, guys, there's 917 people on live at the moment. Guys, we'd ask that if you do us a favour and like this video, the more likes we get, the more it gets pushed up on YouTube, and the more people that are just browsing YouTube will see it. So give us a like. Make sure you're following as well. But that's just the one favour that we'd ask over the course of this 3 hours. You give us a like. Stevie, I'm just coming back to you very, very quickly, just before we go to Chris. We're getting a lot of comments about Graham Souness as part of this conversation. I know you felt quite strongly, or you had good sources on the whole thing with Graham Souness. My understanding was he was offered a club ambassadorial role. That's what the discussions were. People saying, why wasn't he offered a director of football role? Stevie, you want to answer that?
I didn't know you could browse YouTube. I know you can.
Use your search bar to search for things.
I know you could browse other internet sites, but I didn't know you could browse YouTube. So that's interesting. I just thought you kind of jump from video to video. So that's interesting.
You can
Graham Souness. Listen, Graham Souness is a legend of club. Absolutely.
Just Stevie, just to let Chris know, don't worry, that's the Phantom. Chris.
Yeah. Chris has already met my missus. He knows fine well not to say anything about Karen when she's in earshot. So he's not silly enough to fall for that. Graham Souness, look, I think Graham Souness maybe had an idea that was maybe above what we were prepared to offer and willing to kind of do deals with him for that. So I don't want to get in this sort of situation where I say much more on it because, Graham Souness is so well thought of. He's a club legend. I think all that's perfectly fair. But I just think he was a wee bit out of reach for what we were maybe prepared to offer and what he wanted or expected. I also think that there's not too many times in history for Rangers that bringing somebody back has ever really worked. Walter Smith, I think, is one of the most recent kind of exceptions to that rule. But I would be, nothing against Graham Souness, I would want to go down the route where it's somebody, if we were going director of football, that's a young, kind of exciting appointment. Now, I don't have any names to think about, and I'm not offering this as somebody we should go and get. But if you look at the type of job Davy Weir's done at Brighton and his recruitment strategy and the kind of way that he goes about his business and the kind of way that he conducts and has got the academy working and things like that down there, I know they rave about Brighton and how they work and everything else. And I know personally what a good club they are. So I would be looking to go down that route rather than go for an older kind of maybe set in their ways kind of person. So I would have loved Graham Souness to be involved with Rangers some way, but I wouldn't be offering him a director of football role. I would want somebody that's, and listen, people are going to say, well, who do you want then? I don't have a list of names. That's not how it kind of works. So, but it would be great if we could do something in the long term, kind of positionally wise, where we go down the route of somebody like that kind of mentality where it's youth and it's forward thinking and we're doing everything kind of that style for the academy and stuff. But I happen to think, Johnny, that the changes we made off the park, I happen to think James Bisgrove and the things that we're doing around the stadium, the improvement, all the kind of, upgrades and things like that, I think the things are moving in the right direction. So it's just a wee bit of patience with regards to maybe the club do need a wee bit of time to find the formula that they want with regard to a director of football, sporting director kind of thing. But I am quite pleased with the kind of engagement where we are off the park. And it's a sea change of attitude, Johnny. You know yourself, Chris, you'll know from the last year at the club compared to where we are now. So, everything always seems bad on the back of a Wednesday night result like we had, and it really was a shocker. But I still think there's a lot of positive things going about the club that we can enjoy or at least look forward to coming to fruition in the near future.
Listen, Chris, I totally agree with Stevie on the job that Davy Weir's done at Brighton, although I also think that Brighton is one of those clubs where the people come and go, but the structure actually is what stands tall, and you see success year after year, because Tony Bloom, the owner of Brighton, is a very, very smart guy who's put in place a kind of very modern, maths-orientated structure that is designed to give them an edge on everyone else. Davy Weir left the club under not terrific circumstances, and he's at a big Premier League club. So, well, I take Stevie's point, probably a stretch, you would think.
I would think Davy Weir is out with Rangers.
Hold on. I didn't say that we should go and get Davy Weir. That wasn't the point. I said it was a Davy Weir like somebody that's that kind of forward thinking.
You said go and get Davy Weir. Rewind the tape. You said get him in. The campaign starts here for Davy Weir. It even rhymed.
When Stevie starts campaigning for things start happening.
Listen, I tell you what, Gio will testify to that.
As well, the former director of football.
Yes. He's watching at the moment, pinging little balls at the screen. While he's off to get Sangari. Although I think that's fallen through actually now. No, Davy Weir, Chris.
Yes, on Davy Weir in particular, I think is out with Rangers' reach for a variety of reasons. But as Stevie said, I think it's that type of, if you're going to do an identity of who you want for that role, I think someone of that standard in the game, someone who's got a track record, even though he's only been in his current position if for not that long. You can see the success that Brighton have got. I think that's a model that Rangers, if they could follow, then they're on to a winner, because it's success after success, and that's where the long-term planning comes in, and that's where, as I was mentioning earlier on, I think Rangers, if they do go down this road again, have to be very careful how they frame it. I think if there is someone comes in, they won't have as big a control over the recruitment drive. It's going to be overseeing the academy. It's going to be overseeing the scouts. It's going to be sports science. It's going to be medical. It's going to be the women's team. It's going to be all the other corners of Ogdenhowie, every other bit in Ogdenhowie that has to operate for the first team to be successful without getting involved in picking a team and signing the players. That's why you appoint a Rangers manager. He has to live or die by those decisions of who he signs, who he plays, and the results that Rangers get. Whoever else is within the football structure is there to support them, not to oversee them, not to manage them. So I think it'll be interesting to see, as I said, how Rangers go down the route over the next wee while, because I do think it's something they should do. But don't be surprised if the status quo sticks. Certainly while Michael Beale is the manager. Sorry.
Yeah, quite a few people coming in with suggestions. Chris Redhead saying Warburton thoughts. I don't think that would probably go down too well just generally, but I've always respected Mark Warburton. I think he would be a good appointment and a director of football role, and I think that's actually what he's wanting to do in his next position. So certainly someone with a lot to offer the game. Another one from Big Harry. I'm not going to say his surname after getting myself in a little bit of a flap with this earlier on. Billy Reid, former Hamilton manager, long-term Graham Potter, number 2, big Rangers man, which he is, and has a fantastic network of contacts. I mean, that is probably a good shout, the kind of person that might be able to come in and do something interesting. And then there's other people throwing up different names, got Kevin Thompson there and things like that. Maybe with the director of football, though, Stevie, what you're looking for actually is someone who we haven't heard of. Somebody who's made a name for themselves at a smaller club in England, who's got a reputation for organisation, for restructuring, for bringing through youth players. But that's the kind of job that Rangers are looking for, isn't it? So it's a kind of different beast now than what it was when Ross Wilson was appointed.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think we would just like somebody to come in and be a little bit forward thinking and do that kind of, to roll with a kind of enthusiasm. And I think what you said about Brighton was quite interesting, that, if one of the kind of somebody leaves, it just continues, because they've got a kind of basis of how they're going to do things and how they're going to run the club. And I think that we are getting there off the field, and I think that's completely fair to say. So, perhaps it's one of these things, as I said before, that's just kind of time orientated of who we get in and what we kind of do with it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not as kind of desperate as others might be to go and make an appointment on that one. I'm quite willing to see how it works out. And I also think as well that, I think maybe we're best leaving it to see how it pans out and how Michael Beale's tenure pans out as well, because if Beale turns it around, or not turns it around, that's the wrong statement. If Michael Beale goes from strength to strength and we kick on and have a good domestic season and that, then it's a good time to appoint somebody, because you're bringing them in on a crest of a wave and stuff like that. If things go the other way and then you're bringing somebody in, it's a lot of pressure on 2 appointments then instead of just 1. So perhaps we're right just to kind of sit it out and just see where it takes us. I don't think there's any rush necessarily over this one.
Yeah, just looking online, there is another deal that looks like it's about to be done for a player that was linked with Rangers quite heavily. I know for a fact in the season after 55, Rangers looked extremely closely at Ross Stewart. I think the fee mooted at the time was around £4.5 million, and Southampton have splashed out 10 million plus add-ons now to prize him away from Sunderland. So that's quite an interesting one. Good player, did well when he was at Ross County, obviously, and someone I think the club previously, certainly going back a couple of years, had their eye on. But that's all we've got at the moment. There isn't an awful lot more. I don't know, Chris, is your phone beeping furiously in the background there telling you that there's going to be big things happening, or are we still in that same status quo where we're sitting here looking at tumbleweed drift past?
Hey, who did you discuss in the half hour while I was filing James Blair and Ben Davies updates? What have I missed? Because the phone has gone silent since then.
No, we were just talking about we were just basically talking about the general state of the transfer window. What I'd like to do now, I'd like to move us on to this draw today, because I think it's worth talking about. Quite an attractive, I think, overall draw. Clubs in terms of Real Betis and Aris Limassol that I can't remember the team drawing in Europe. Sparta Prague's obviously one that we all know quite well, having drawn them a couple of times in the last 30 years. You look at it, you think to yourself, well, clearly Betis are a good side, managed by Manuel Pellegrini, who's won the Premier League in recent years. If you look at their squad, there is a lot of talent in there, not least players like Manuel Bravo in goal. You've got Hector Bellerin, Mark Bartra, who was at Barcelona, Isco, of course, so many years at Real Madrid, and a wonderful creative player on his day. Ayoze Perez, who was at Leicester for many years. Nabil Fekir, a lot of real creative quality in that side. William Carvalho in midfield, who's another he's a ball winner and a pretty good player as well. Serious quality in that Betis side. No wonder they were a sort of top 6 La Liga side. Chris, is this one that excites you? This draw and going to Seville once again? Are you ready for that?
As I said to you earlier on, Johnny, I don't know if I can get back to Seville just yet. If you want to send me on the trip, I'm certainly not going to say no. I've missed out on Servette and Eindhoven this season, and I do like a trip, as I'm sure my colleagues will testify. So I'm more than happy to go back to Seville. Hopefully, it's a happier experience this time around. I might just go for the PTSD from the final by the time I get there. I think in terms of the draw, I think it's a good one for Rangers. They've avoided, avoided Sporting, avoided Brighton, which would have been a really tricky tie for us. And I think overall it has to be a group that you're looking to qualify from. It's hard to tell what the level is of this side in European competition. Clearly, nowhere near good enough beating PSV. Speaking to somebody earlier on after the press conference, and there's maybe a feeling that the manager's talking up PSV more than they're actually due. I thought they were a good side. Clearly some good players going forward. I thought if Rangers had defended properly, the tie was there for us to have a real good crack at. I'd be surprised if you see PSV getting to last 8, last 4 of the Champions League. They might go and prove me wrong. So I think it's hard to judge where Rangers are European level. Clearly not Champions League level, but how good, how competitive can they be in the Europa League? Are they the competitive side that we saw under Beale and Gerrard first time around? Are they a side that can defy all the odds, like they did under Gio on the road to the final? Time will tell. But I think it's definitely a good draw for Rangers. Some good trips in there for the fans and the press boys to look forward to. Should be some good nights at Ibrox. You'd fancy them to go and pick up a fair few points at Ibrox, get a few pound in the bank as well. So I think overall it's probably as good as they could have hoped for from it.
Yeah, Stevie, what's your instant reaction without perhaps knowing tons and tons about these teams? We'll obviously learn more as the weeks go on, but does that, from a fan's point of view, are those attractive places to go? You know, Prague's obviously not a bad place for a beer, for a night out. Cyprus is nice any time of the year, and Seville probably going at a time when it's a little bit less boiling hot would be pretty nice, I would imagine.
It's funny because on the way back from Eindhoven the other day, the guy couldn't find my stamp that you get your wee passport stamp with on the way in. And he was like, I cannot find your stamp. We cannot let you through. So it was holding up the whole queue. So he started reading out all my stamps. And it was like Leipzig, Napoli, Seville. And it was just the who's who of kind of bad trips in the last couple of years in Rangers European. So I'm not sure that anybody was in. Actually, my friend Mary went and messaged me and said, can you tell me what away trips you're going on so that I don't go on them to see a Rangers defeat? So I'm not sure that I'll be going on any of these trips, Johnny, because I've not been too lucky with them. but they are good trips. I think the only thing with the Cyprus one is I don't think we'll end up with much more than kind of 500 odd tickets because they've got a really small ground. So it would be good if that one could get moved. There's talk already, maybe it getting moved to National Stadium, which would be good for the travelling fans to get a bigger allocation. I think Prague, you get a few thousand. Betis, I'm not so sure about. So they're not great trip ticket-wise, I don't think, for potential trips because you know that Rangers would take thousands if they could. So in that term, it's a bit difficult. And in terms of, like Chris said, the group that Brighton got was just a horror. If we had got something like that, it just puts pressure on, and we don't really want that. But the top three in this group will go to, at very minimum, the Conference League. I think that's how it works, if I'm right with that. So we should really be aiming, very least, to secure European football after Christmas. There's obviously the coefficient to think about. There's prize money to think about as well. So these are they're good ties for the fans to look forward to. I'm led to believe that the pricing is fairly reasonable as well. A kind of sneak peek into that, and I think it's quite reasonable. So, the packages should be doable for people. They've certainly not made the mistakes they made last time with the Champions League pricing. So all in all, I think, I'm hoping that we get a good kind of support and for these trips and things like that. I'm not too sure where I'll be going on. Funnily enough, Chris, mentioning that he didn't get to go to Eindhoven, these other places, that's about the 8th time I've heard him say that. He's texting me on a daily basis since the day the other day. So I'm sure that, Johnny, you need to sort him out.
I think his name's down for the next one. I don't think he has to worry about that. I think his name is well and truly down for the next one. Listen, there's a bit of transfer news coming out of Rangers. I can confirm, having spent some time with Mr. Jack this afternoon, I mentioned this player's name, and he said, I bet you towards the end of the night we'll see a statement coming out saying this player's had his contract ripped up. Chris, I'll let you say the name.
I've not checked Twitter, but I'm assuming it's Josh McPake.
Indeed, Rangers released a statement that said Rangers have tonight agreed a mutual termination of Josh McPake's contract. Everyone at the club wishes Josh all the best in the future. Very much expected, so he can presumably go and negotiate as a free agent with a new club. Definitely time for a player who just hasn't fulfilled his potential to move on and find somewhere where he can get regular first team football and put his career back into a situation where he's able to kind of build for the future, Chris, because he's just not had a good time of it in the last couple of years, has he?
Okay. Can Derek and the boys fill the next 90 minutes talking about Josh McPake? Josh will need to get some graphs looked out. If that's all it's doing, we've ticked off James Blair, we've ticked off Ben Davies. I'm assuming we've officially killed off Harry Suter, or not killed him off, but killed off the transfer. So it's Josh McPake all the way for the night shift.
Can I just say, Johnny, there's a few things being posted online about Ross Stewart maybe failed his medical at Southampton. So that's an interesting one. So because I know that Ross County are due like a wee bit of money. So where did you see that was finalised? So that'll be interesting to see where that is, because that's obviously a good move, and I'd be looking to see where he is, because I know we were linked with him quite a bit, like you said before. So I'd be interested to see how he got on if he did make that move.
It was a very high-profile Scotland-based transfer known journalist from another organisation, Scotland's. So it was his Twitter account. So normally he's spot on. We'll see how. As we know, Stevie, as we were talking about earlier, these transfer stories, they're right until they're wrong, and then you get bitten. That's how it works.
Listen, Chris can't wait until this window closes, till we get out relatively unscathed, and we can just enjoy the next couple of months.
I'm maybe taking this a little bit left field, Stevie, right? But just discussing Josh McPake a little bit more. It's kind of symptomatic of the luck, I think, that Rangers have had with really talented young lads coming through. There's just been so many of them. Listen, I don't need to tell you about Billy. Billy's always incredibly talented and gets snapped away before he's able to play. And there's been a few lads like that. If you think of Mbui, and there's a few others that have been snapped up. Aston Villa obviously taking Wilson away and things like that. But then you've had these other lads who have got great talent and just haven't finally been able to make that last push from very talented in the first team. It just shows you how difficult it is at Rangers, isn't it? It's just not, and never has been, a particularly good place for young talent to come through. Certainly not in my lifetime. It's a real tough, hard school.
Yeah, it is, because the fan base is extremely demanding as well, and they make, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are. We all like to see the young players come through, but it's only the really, you look at Alan Hutton and the type of start he had. He got it really tight off the support. He broke his leg. He came back. He got, they were on his back a wee bit, and then all of a sudden he went on to incredible form, and then he moved on for £9 million to Tottenham. It takes an incredible mentality to make it at Rangers. It really does. You look at John Fleck, was supposed to be the next, superstar, and John Fleck's a very good player and he's had a very good career. That's not a criticism, but it's fair to say that he maybe never hit the heights that we need. It needed a move for him to flourish and become what he has, because Rangers is just it's a tough crowd. We know that. I laugh, and I've made a joke about it all summer. You get 10 minutes. You get 10 minutes to make a first impression before people will start judging you. And it's no different for our youth players. But the thing is about the young lad McPake, Rangers gave him a 3-4 year deal at a point in his career where he ended up then going out on loan twice. I think he went to Dundee, he went somewhere else as well, and it didn't work out for him. I think, if we're giving out deals to boys that are 18, 19 at that length, we need to be completely sure that we're not giving them just out of, kind of hope that he's going to develop, and not actually being that he is going to develop. And I think we've ended up, if that's a mutual termination and things like that, I would hate to think that we've ended up paying, the rest of the contract for him basically to go there. So if it's been a mutual part and so that he can go somewhere else, I wish him all the best, but I really hope it's not cost the club money, and I hope that we would learn from a kind of deal like that, boys that age, we don't really want to get in a position again where it's such a big contract, things like that. So I think there's lessons to be learned there, potentially, about how we handle some of the young lads. There's a few on the kind of skirting around the first team at the moment from the B team and things. So I wouldn't be wanting to make that same mistake again, without being overly critical of Josh McPake and stuff like that. I just think that handing out huge contracts, you've seen the end result now.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, Stevie, you've done a terrific job. Your shift is over. You've wowed the troops. You've kept things going. You've kept the energy up. So well done. You even managed to get out and get a wee drinky poo halfway through. Fantastic.
Can I just say a shout out to John Buchanan, who I met over in Eindhoven, who was extremely nice about the Rangers View, came over and said that I was his favourite, and he loves watching the show. So obviously we should make John Buchanan like one of our favourite kind of people that watches. So thank you to John for saying hello. And actually, quite a few people came up in Eindhoven and said hello and like what we do here and what we do in the blog and all that kind of stuff. So just thank you to the people that I've said. I've just looked down and my dog has just destroyed a ball, honestly, everywhere. And it's just like, that's what it is now.
It's the perfect time to call it a day.
Honestly, the bits are everywhere. And now she's looking at me, and I know that I'm going to have to go and clean this up. So yeah, perfect time for me. I am off to America on Monday. I shall see you all in a month or so's time.
See you then, Stevie. Right, Chris. And then there was two, but actually there's more. Let's get in first of all, the one, the only, Mr. Adam Thornton. He's on mute. Adam, I don't even know what you're saying.
Hello. Hi. I'm here.
Welcome.
I signed up to be with Derek, not you. I've been missold here.
Well, listen, I just thought I'd get you on first. I know Derek's smiling in the background there. I can see his wee ginger face, giving it laldy, smiling away. But I'm just going to hold him in stasis for a time and just check in with you. How are you getting on, buddy?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Don't think
you got any news that you can perhaps furnish us with? Any exclusive content about signings?
You stole my Josh McPake exclusive, so I'm absolutely all out. I am all out.
Listen, I just want to tell you there's a bit of a news now. I'm not sure if there's anything in it or not because it's in the comments. But Mark Stitt is saying something happening at Ibrox.
Tense.
We will see. We will see. I will leave on that note of excitement, and allow Derek Clark to come in and take over my position. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to my nonsense for 75 minutes. It's been a pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Mr. Derek Clark, welcome.
Welcome. How's it going, lads? Can we clock off? You've covered everything, have you not?
Pretty much, aye.
Absolutely not. You've got plenty. I've not even scratched the surface of the Europa League group. That's how much I've left you with, son. 75 minutes. We've only touched on Real Betis. We've not talked about Sparta Prague. We've not talked about Limassol, which I know Adam is an expert on. Cypriot football, he's your insider.
Yep.
So feel free to talk about that. In terms of my list of topics here, we've not really touched on the Celtic game. Who's going to play? Any of that. So no preview stuff done, Derek. You've got plenty to get stuck in. And of course, there's all the transfer news that's going to happen over the next 2 hours.
Yeah. Plenty of it by all accounts. Well, you've done well for the first hour of the show. I did enjoy that. I'm loving Chris's attire as well. He's dressed for the occasion. So
we're trying to best, Derek, as you know. I'll try and make an effort. Professional.
Yeah, absolutely superb. Good stuff. Right, Johnny, you can head off now and watch a movie or go to bed or whatever you fancy doing on a Friday evening while we don't talk about transfers.
Sayonara. Goodbye.
Good evening, folks. Chris, how long are you with us here? Because I'm conscious that you've been on talking to Johnny, which takes its toll. How long are you? Can you grace us with your presence?
Now that Johnny's not on the show, I can say I've had to speak to him for the last hour and a bit here. I met him at Ibrox earlier on. I had to take him to the press conference and talk to him in the car as well. So I think that's my McFarlane quota used up for the between now and the January transfer window.
Absolutely.
Well, you can sign off as well because I know you've got things to do on Friday, so you can clock off as well if you want to. You're more than welcome to stay if you want to talk. I'm not too sure what me and Adam are going to talk about in all honesty, but you're more than welcome to stay. But if you get things to do, then Chris, I'm giving you the opportunity to depart now. So use it if you wish.
I shall end on a high. I've done my 2 stories for the night. I'll end on a high. If anything, if the phone goes, I'll click on the link and I'll be back on to break the news. So if you don't hear from me, there's nothing happening down Ibrox way. So I shall bid you both a good night. Enjoy Sunday.
Yeah, cracking work, Chris. Thank you very much. There's Chris Jack there. So if there's anything happening, folks, we'll be the first to let you know about it. Adam, before we talk about what 0 transfers are happening at Ibrox at this moment in time, how was Eindhoven? We know you went over there. The on-pitch stuff was a bit of a mess, but how was your trip over there?
Off-pitch stuff was quite messy as well, if I'm being honest. But no, it was good fun. It was kind of all set up quite nicely with a day in Amsterdam and then down to Eindhoven on the day of the game. Everything, that was my first time. I didn't make it to the one last season, so everything was quite close by. Like, you got off the train and the hotel was 5 minutes away, and then the square was 5 minutes away, and then the stadium was 10 minutes walk away. And I was like, this is great, fantastic, until you sit down in the seat. Quite similar to Amsterdam last year, to be honest. Sit down in the seat and then get a battering. So not ideal. I don't think I'll be back in Holland for a while, to be honest. Those two trips have cut me deep. But overall was enjoyable. Always good to get away with Martin. It was good fun.
Yeah, always is over there. A few comments coming in about my light and the wattage. The Rangers group says that ball behind Derek must have some wattage. Never seen a blackout. It is glowing there. Obviously, I've got a mirror behind me. It is going bananas. But Dave Fulton says you need to get yourself a selfie ring light, Derek, instead of having the big light on. I do have one of those selfie ring lights, Dave. However, I can't be bothered setting it up. Have you got a selfie ring light, Adam?
I do. But I'm the same as you. I always forget to put it on.
Yeah, so there you go.
We're not right. We're professional, but we're not. We're professional, but we're not like actual YouTuber professional.
Yeah,
Well,
folks, what's your... Yeah, you're a YouTuber. Yeah, it doesn't quite ring true. Right. Thank you to everyone for tuning in for the first hour of the show, folks. It is greatly appreciated. Just to give you an idea of what is happening for this second hour, myself and Adam's on for a bit. We'll also be joined by Ali Bain across over in America at 10:30. So we'll have him on for around half an hour to 45 minutes as well. And we'll also, after around about 11:15, we'll get Euan on for the final hour of the final 45 minutes of the transfer window. Not a lot has happened. Of course, Michael Beale conducted his press conference earlier on this afternoon. I'll just read out some of the sort of big talking points from that. He was asked, do you expect any transfer business? He said, I think we front-loaded early in terms of recruitment. There might be a loan for one of the younger members of the squad, but unless I receive a phone call in the short term, then it won't be one that is drawn out late into the evening. I think with 9 players coming into the squad, I think it's important that the squad is giving time to settle down. We don't have any injuries at this moment in time, so the squad is looking healthy. The squad size has come down in size and in average age. We're okay, we're good to go. Naturally, every manager is going to sit here and say they want one more, but if we don't, we are happy with the squad moving forward. What do you make of that, Adam? 9 players have been brought in, of course. I think after Wednesday night, alarm bells have been set off with regards to particularly the defence. I know the forward line, there are question marks whether it is good enough this season. If no player comes in, and it looks very, very unlikely at this moment in time, the business that's been done, are you content? Are you happy with that?
Probably not, just because of, I guess, what we think is going to happen. I'm not sure going with the centre halves that we have. There's numbers there, absolutely, but in terms of injury status, in terms of contribution, in terms of what we think about them as a support, I'm not sure there's 3 there even that we would be 100% happy with to go through the season. We're putting a lot of faith on John Souttar not getting injured, and if John Souttar gets injured, we're putting a lot of faith on Leon Balogun not getting injured, and vice versa. So I guess in terms of numbers, and I guess in terms of how those players probably could be, then domestically we're okay, but it's just that fear factor, I think, there. So yeah, I would like someone to come in there, but I think the Balogun thing is just the weird part for me, because we kind of assumed when Balogun came in, it was to cover for Leon King, and then King came back really quickly. Did we box ourselves into Balogun's wages and then we couldn't do something else? I don't know. That's a messy part for me. In terms of the attack in the midfield, I am kind of feeling okay about it. For me, it's more we haven't seen enough of the players, I think, or we've chopped and changed so much that we haven't seen enough of the players playing either in their best positions or together with players just to try and get a bit of a feel. I mean, Dessers and Danilo have only started twice together, and everybody would have thought surely those players are coming in as the first choice pair, or at least 2 of the first choice 3. Hasn't happened for the last 4 games. Danilo hasn't started for 4 games, so that part of it I'm a bit concerned about. Playing Todd Cantwell and Cifuentes, not necessarily out of position, but maybe in certain areas of the pitch that maybe we don't think suits their best skills, so they're having to adapt, and all these type of things are happening that I think are maybe just a little bit worrying. But certainly I think in terms of players that we've got in, skills, qualities, etc., we do have a lot. It's just, I guess, trying to find the balance in that sort of front 6. The defence is still a little bit of a worry, both in terms of, I guess, goals that can be shipped, and then also in terms of reliability for injuries. But the manager obviously feels that it's a risk worth taking. So I guess there's no debate about whose risk it is, I guess, when this window's shut. So yeah, we'll wait and see how it goes.
Yeah, Stevie asked the manager at the press conference earlier, he said that you wanted a left-sided centre-back and a replacement for Ryan Kent, and it hasn't happened. He then responded, we went a long way down the road for a left-sided centre-back earlier in the window to provide competition for Ben Davies. We were priced out by a Premier League club who paid more than we were willing to pay. That was the board and me. We thought the fee paid was outside the value of that player. In terms of getting a dribbler for wide areas, we also wanted to see if someone from inside could take a step up, and we got a big step up from Rabi Matondo. and the return of fitness from Tom Lawrence, which gives me a lot of optimism. By the time we get back from the international break, I think Tom will be ready to start and become a main player in our team again. Ben Davies came into pre-season injured from an injury he got at the end of last season. He's been fit for the last 2 weeks, but I feel John Souttar has been playing well enough to keep him out of the team. I feel we have adequate players to get us to where we want to be. Tom Lawrence isn't a winger for me, Adam. I don't know if you've just thrown him in there as sort of like a new signing coming back, but he's not one that's going to have blistering pace and take on players over on the wing and cross balls into the box. The defenders, I've got to say, I'm concerned like you. I think he's meaning a number of people were saying it's Austin Trusty who they were linked with earlier on in the window. Ben Davies, of course, looks like he's going to stay put. Stoke City with a loan bid that has been turned down by Rangers. But yeah, that's the one area I think that there's a bit of concern about. You said there, John Souttar, we know his injury record. He's likely going to be injured at some point this season. We've only got Leon Balogun in there, so
do you know?
Yep.
Do you know as well what the thing? I mean, I wasn't on board with the Souttar signing last year, and I think it was maybe just more when it was being billed as a Connor Goldson replacement, with the injuries, with the fact he'd kind of just came back and he was used to playing in a back three. I wasn't on board with it if he was going to be coming in and being a first pick. Obviously he then got injured and he wasn't great in the first couple of games, and he got injured and he came back and he was really, really good. But I think the perception thing for me, I find really funny, because there's probably a case to be made that John Souttar has been at fault for just as many, if not more, goals than Ben Davies, and probably the same amount of games. But I guess the stature of Souttar is the thing that I really like. I think he looks like a centre half. He looks like a Rangers centre half. He can bring the ball out probably better than Ben Davies can. So it's one of those things where the sort of risk reward there, if you like, and the fact that he has more sort of strings to his bow. He's more physical. Maybe we haven't seen it, but Luke de Jong is a very, very, very good centre forward. So there's going to be times in these games where we're going to lose those players. And I feel more confident with Souttar going forward probably than I do with Davies, but there are still mistakes there that they need to be ironed out. Again, I'm assuming it's Austin Trusty as well. Feel like that's a little bit of a concern for me. I'd be interested to know the timeline there. If it is,
but then if they've lost out on him, Adam, they're not. Surely they've got a list of players. Yeah, so that's my concern.
That's my thinking there. I don't know. We spoke. I don't know if it was on this show or maybe on Heart and Hand, but we spoke about has the manager decided to go for Balogun and Danilo as a kind of duo, if you like, and bring in a free transfer at the back and front load the attack. Was it maybe Austin Trusty and a free transfer, Josh Maja, for example, as the sort of alternatives there? And then the manager has actually decided, for whatever reason, got priced out of Austin Trusty and said, well, I'll bring Balogun in, and then that lets me get Danilo. It's a timeline that we're never really sure of, isn't it? We'll never really know what cards were on the table at what points, but it certainly feels like the manager has went for one more at the top rather than getting the player that he wanted at the back. But if that's not the case, Derek, and it's just we had 4 million sitting there and we decided not to go for Austin Trusty and then we never went for anyone else, then that's a bit strange to me. I think if you've got that money sitting there, you've identified that you need a centre half, and you don't go and do it. That seems a wee bit weird to me. And I agree with your points on Lawrence as well. I think, as you said, I think it's probably just we speak so literally. I think when we're talking about football, and I don't think the manager does. I don't think people in football do. So when Stevie's asked the question about a winger, I would imagine Beale has sort of in his head, well, I've got players that can play off the left, Cantwell, Bill, Lawrence, etc., can play off the left, and he's maybe just dragged those names into his head and said these are players that sort of can play and can link midfield and attack. When we think of winger, we think of pace. So I think it's maybe just one of those cross purposes where we take everything literally, where the manager maybe doesn't mean that. But yeah, I agree with you. If pace is something that we think we're lacking, and we only have Matondo and possibly Sima that can give us that pure pace, then I would like to see someone else come in. But again, it doesn't look likely now.
Yeah, talking about someone else coming in, let's introduce Ali Bain, who joins us all the way over from the United States of America. How's it going, Ali?
It's been a very challenging day, Derek. I'm not the only football coach. This is a lot on today. Unfortunately, my business has not been transfer related. It's my ceiling might fall in pre-video, post-video here, so I apologise in advance if if that happens. But
those kids going wild again, are they?
Yes, exactly. For the purposes of the local government who may be watching, they are tucked up in bed right now. Nothing else.
It's dinner time over there at the moment, isn't it? Was it half 5 or something?
It is. It's right at the crazy period for the Bain family, so it is. But yeah, all good. All good. Mrs. B's currently holding down the fort, which is all nice.
Well, good on you, Mrs. B, for allowing us to converse with Ali about everything everything that's not happening on transfer deadline day at Ibrox. Ali, I just asked Adam there. Of course, 9 signings have come in. I think everyone after Wednesday night was hoping for some defensive reinforcements. Are you surprised that maybe Michael Beale's comments in his press conference this afternoon and been happy with the business that's been carried out thus far and with the prospect of no one else coming in?
Yeah, I think if you got him down in a room and the 3 of us had a chat with him, I think he'd maybe get a different answer. But in terms of speaking to the press, obviously he has to give, I guess, he's sort of united front, a bit of a politician's answer. So that was probably to be expected. I think that, to be honest, guys, the biggest thing trying to deduce really from today is the lack of people going out the club. I think that's something that we're obviously interested in who's coming in, right? We want new players, we want to get stronger. But for me, it's the lack of outgoings that have been a little bit of a worry. And what I mean by that, it's not so much that people don't want the players, it's maybe how, this is where, like a director of football, guys whose job it is to actively sell players for you. Beale's not going to do that. Beale's not going to be out there and certainly no one on the board's going to be actively doing that. So you're looking for the player or the player's agent to maybe make that move. And if you've got a player, I know we mentioned Davies quite a lot, who's into the second year of a 4-year contract, it's the way of the world. These lads are quite happy to sit for maybe another 6 to 8 months and then maybe see where their future lies after that. So I think that's the big takeaway for me today. In terms of the actual incomings, I wasn't surprised there wasn't any more. I was perhaps a little bit disappointed, like everyone's feeling right now. But yeah, when you look at the size of the squad, still a lot of players.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of comments coming in. I want to bring this one up here. Broxy loves the Ranger review, says, Derek, Ali and Adam, what do you guys think after all the new signings that a lot of us are most looking forward to seeing Matondo and Roof starting? A few weeks ago, nobody would believe it. Adam, for the game on Sunday, I know that someone else asked what our team is. We'll get on to that shortly. Roof is one of the first teams in the team sheet for me on Sunday. Matondo, I've been credit to the lads for coming back. I think everyone had written him off and had seen him heading for the Ibrox exit door this summer. But does that tell us about the signings that have come in and how they haven't sort of hit the ground running?
Yeah, I think so. But I think obviously there's 2 sides to it as well. It's perfectly acceptable. And the manager said today, Matondo has massively upped his game in training. So for me, it's not necessarily an either or type thing. I mean, you can be a player that's coming in for millions and millions of pounds as he was last year, or you can be a loan signing coming in this year as maybe Sima is. But ultimately, I guess it's how you perform in training in the short term. And if Matondo is doing well, it maybe doesn't necessarily mean that other people are doing not very well. I think we just sort of look at how Matondo was last year and how far out of the picture he was compared to how he is now. Perfectly acceptable to be a second season player, take your time to get up to speed and get rid of your injuries, etc., and then go. And yeah, the Roof one, I guess. I mean, for me, Roof is probably still the best striker at the club, and I don't think that's a detriment to other players that are there. I just think when Kemar Roof is fit, he's an absolutely fantastic footballer. So again, it's maybe not an either or for me. In terms of the weekend, I'd like to see us getting back, or I'd like to see us getting to some sort of focused pattern or focused settled selection, I should say, and try and get some sort of focused patterns in terms of how we attack and various things there. I think we've chopped and changed so much that it may have been a necessity over the last few weeks, just with the type of games that we've had and trying to get players up to speed and get other players back. But as the manager said today, we've got 0 injuries now, and we've got a 2-week break coming up. Very, very important that we get players settled in and the manager starts to get some kind of semblance of a settled, maybe not a settled 11, but certainly a settled 9 would be ideal. I think that's key for me. What we do in this game shouldn't necessarily impact maybe what we do in the next game, or Motherwell at home or anything like that. I think we need to start to look to what is the best approach that we can do to win the majority of our games, and then tweak the sort of tweak the other games, the sort of special games or the one-off games. We can tweak things for that. Maybe putting another defensive midfielder in, or however we want to do it. But I think we need to get to a point where we've got a sort of settled structure. And a settled lineup as soon as we can, to give everybody a bit of help to let the players settle in, to let the fans get used to the players and understand how they're going to play. I think all of that is crucial. For me at the weekend, I don't really know. To be honest, I don't know if Matondo starts for me. I still feel like Matondo is a kind of pace on the break thing just now. He obviously did some good stuff in quite a few games recently, but I still feel maybe when the game is stretched later on, he's still for just now is someone that I would want to bring on. I think Kamal Roof has to start up top. For me, I think Cantwell needs to play as the number 10 in this game. And then I guess the other striker, it's a toss up between Danilo and Roof. For me, I'd be picking Danilo because I think he is going to be the really good player. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he's someone that we need to start to use. The fact that we spent all that money on him, he probably is the marquee signing, certainly in terms of money spent, and he's been on the bench for 4 games. Just doesn't look great at all, regardless of context, regardless of we want this player to play or this game suits someone else. I think for me, Danilo needs to start getting into the team, and if that happens on Sunday, then that would be good.
On Danilo, Ali, what worries me slightly is I spoke to a couple of guys about him. One, an ex player who played for 20 over there in Holland, and a journalist, and they said they've got concerns he's too lightweight for Scottish football, and he won't be able to deal with the physicality of it. We've not really seen much of him, to be fair. But I know a number of supporters were questioning why we've got a £5-6 million player on the bench in Eindhoven in midweek. You're asking questions.
Yeah, I think this is the conundrum. A player like Danilo, really, I think in a certain system he could be a true number 9. In our league, where you're looking for a big, strapping striker that's going to wrestle 6'5" centre backs, that's probably not the profile. So therefore, can you play him off the sides? Can you play him underneath? I know for Feyenoord, I guess he played a little bit. The number 10, sort of in a 2-man system. I guess the issue you're always going to have whenever you play him in one of those spots that isn't the 9, right? It's how he defends. So we saw, I think it was a Servette game, where he's playing off the left and he's basically tracking back all the time. And that's not what you want from him, right? You want him up there. So then is it a case of, do you then have a midfielder that can cover for him underneath to help Barisic that way? We've not really had, we had Dowell in there for a little bit, not really, made that a position of our own. No one's made that a position of their own. So again, it's that bigger question of, yes, there's ways to find him or fit him into the team. It's just how do you then get the best from him? How do you protect him? And again, in a game like the weekend where, Celtic are going to make a go of this, they're obviously going to have both fullbacks going. Yet you could on one end say, yes, there's going to be opportunities to get in behind. But conversely, if you're also playing Roof, so Roof, Dessers and Danilo, all 3 central strikers, you're leaving yourself open for their fullbacks getting forward. That's the challenge he's going to have. But in terms of talent, Derek, I certainly don't think there's any question about this boy's ability. It's just where, again, like all of these boys, where they fit in. And this is the thing, any normal club has a settled team that you buy players to augment for those positions. We've not even had a settled 11, never mind a settled setup. So we've got this sort of, conglomerate of players that we're all still trying to figure out. And by the way, that's great for some of the boys. That's great for a Matondo that's trying to come back in and get himself in the team. But for us sort of fans looking on, is trying to see the best for the club. That's where obviously our anxiety rises, because you're going into this game, you don't know who to hang your hat on. You're not sure that Dessers is going to do the business, or whoever it is going to do the business in midfield. And I guess that's where, the frustration comes from, I guess.
For me, I think me and Ali were talking about this earlier on, Derek, and that 3 years up until we won the league, it was just it was an evolution. But I think for the last, 18 months, maybe 2 years of it, it was pretty pretty well defined. You knew who was doing what. Each player in the team had their role. It was the same player, pretty much 9 out of 10, famously. We didn't make many changes to the team, but you just knew what was happening. You knew what each player could do. You knew what they couldn't do. At this point, and I think for these last 2 years, I think Gerrard tried to change it. And he brought in, I think I always remember Ross Wilson saying he wanted to add a little bit of power to the team, and he brought in John Lundstrom, which we can argue the merits of whether that was successful or not. But he also wanted to add a bit more pace, and that's when he brought in Fashion Sakala. Now we know that window didn't maybe go to plan, but that was when I think for me they started to identify ways that we can have an option, try something new, etc. Obviously, that season didn't go to plan, and they did last season. But I think somewhere along the line that's got really, really muddled in terms of recruitment, and we've almost put ourselves between two halfway houses. Of, if you look at the midfield, moving from basically playing 3 number 6s to basically playing 3 number 8s. I think in certain games, and even some games playing maybe number 10s in midfield, etc. And I'm not sure we've quite managed to crack that balance, and we're still, I think, searching for identity under the new manager. And then with all these players coming in as well, it can start to look a little bit messy when you've got a team that the existing players aren't quite sure of what we're trying to do at this stage, and then you add in lots of new players to it as well. It'll take a bit to I think get going. So I think someone said in the comments there to give the players time, and I think that's key. But I think the manager probably needs to start to have a think about, for me, where can I play some of these players? Am I playing these players in positions that are optimal to them? Is this positions that these players have played in before? Is it a position they're suited to in this specific league, as Ali touched on? And just try and find the right system that gets the best out of all the players. And then once he's sort of got that, try and stick with it for a bit. I think that's our best chance of success.
Yeah, I don't think he knows his best team at this moment in time. That's fair to say. Just on Matondo, Ian Ross giving you a bit of praise here. Adam will say that Matondo has a far bigger impact coming off the bench when teams start to tire. And Colin Niven says he's a way to get a Duvel. Enjoy, Colin. What the Premier League of beers? Do you like it, a Duvel, Ali?
I've never tried one, actually.
Wow,
that's one to look out for.
It's rocket fuel.
Sensational. You must have tried one, Adam.
I have, yeah. It's rocket fuel in it. I don't know what percentage it is, but it's
8.5%. 8.5. It's the stumpy beers that you get. So, good night at the Niven household, I think, tonight, watching this transfer show where we're talking about everything but transfers. If you are just joining us, folks, nothing is happening at the moment with regards to Rangers, although Robert Allen gets in touch. What is going on at Ibrox, as there is a load of police? Let us know, Robert, if you're in and about. Then let us know if there's any players that you can identify there. But we're not anticipating any signings at this moment in time, unless Michael Beale gets a phone call late on. The big news earlier on that Chris Jack told us was that Stoke City had tried to lure Ben Davies to the Bet365 stadium on loan, but Rangers had rejected that. So it's Ben Davies will be part of the squad when the window shuts at midnight tonight. Just going back to the game at PSV, Ali, we're examining the goals that Rangers lost, and touched on this, I think, when I was on with Johnny the day after, about the marking for Luc de Jong's header, the set piece after Tavernier had reduced the deficit. The marking was shocking, to say the least. There was aspects of it. Some people were saying, is it zonal marking? Chris, Big Al Red Hand says, bin the zonal marking. As a coach over there in the States, Ali, are you a zonal marking fan?
Well, listen, this is an interesting one. I've heard everyone talk about this goal, so I've watched it a couple of times. Notice that PSV change their zones that they attacked in. And well, it's very, very minimal differences. We've just simply not reacted. So when we do that thing where we snapshot it and say, okay, why is Lammers picking this guy up? Why is Ishin doing it? It's honestly just confusion. So add into that we seem completely immune to just getting a bit of luck in these situations, and the ball going off someone's ear and flying out for a corner or whatnot. It always seems to end up in a goal. I think quite rightly there's been a bit of an inquest, but I'll be honest, I don't think the staff are going to be too happy with that, because they certainly wouldn't have set up purposely to do what happened as well. So I think there's probably a little bit of, I don't really think there's a necessarily finger to point at anyone, but at the same time, it's disappointing. What we'll say about that type of free kick, and you see it a lot of different teams defended differently, right? So with a sort of deep free kick, they have a really, really high line to prevent crosses like that where headers are getting close to the goal so the goalkeeper can come out. It becomes a bit more of a sort of cat and mouse. Conversely, teams who are really, really good at defending want to be close to the goal because obviously the bigger players can head the ball away. What I will say is as well, PSV are also very good at them. And I know that's certainly a bit of a cop-out because we've not been good at defending them for a long time, but PSV in particular, I know they're missing a couple of players, but Ramelow, for example, scored a bunch of goals, and I know, again, he was missing for the night, obviously De Jong for sure. And obviously even guys like Sabari, who don't look physically impressive, but they get on the end of enough. I think there's culpability there. Should we be man-marking at free kicks? I would suggest keeping a better line and just being more organised in your line. It's the corner kicks for me that continue to be the biggest bugbear as to the technique of marking, keeping a body position and jumping to attack the ball. I've saw a few times Suter's bad for it where you feel like he's almost overstepped and he's reaching back to head the ball. Whereas conversely, Suter's brilliant when we're attacking corner kicks. He times them really, really well. So that's the part that as a staff, I think they're going to be banging their heads against the table for sure that they're losing these goals because they're, I don't think for a minute Rangers it's, Friday afternoon, last 10 minutes of training, let's do some corners, lads. I think they will be planning for them, but the frustration is we're not seeing the fruits of that yet. And again, you can coach it all you want, you can be as organised as you want. If you don't have footballers that are combative, good in the air and can attack a ball, you're going to be struggling, unfortunately, and that goes for any level.
What concerns me, Adam, is when Michael Beale got the job, I spoke to someone, a QPR podcaster, and he told me about their recent form, and they were losing goals like a sieve from set pieces. They were hopeless at them. Rangers are losing soft goals from set pieces. It cost them dearly, as it did the other night there, where it took the stuffing and the belief right out of the supporters. You were there in Eindhoven. Tav scores that goal and you're thinking the comeback's on here, and it lasts all of 90 seconds. Not good enough, the defending. Jimmy Duff raises the point on that free kick. Adam, what do you think about Lammers marking De Jong for the PSV third goal when Goldson and Suter were there? Is it a concern for you with Celtic coming up on Sunday that we're going to lose another cheap goal from a set piece?
Yeah, I think it has to be. I think my issues with it are maybe similar to what Ali said in terms of just the logic of it doesn't quite make sense. This for me is a prime example. Obviously, just because you're tall doesn't mean you're good in the air. Which I think is maybe a bit of an issue there with Lammers. I don't understand that personally. For me, that has to be Goldson that's on. Luke De Jong. I get, okay, we'll mark the centre halves and that's fine. Centre halves will mark centre halves or whatever. But I just think when he's that good, as Dave said, De Jong in the air. I think he was lucky not to score 2 last year, and he got 2 this year. I just think that needs to be quite basic there. There's lots of things that you can do, and we do a mix of man marking and zonal. I think that's absolutely fine. I just think it didn't work out at all. De Jong gets the run, and he's away for that goal, for both goals really. I think those goals are poor goals to lose, Derek, but I think the manner of them is the thing that irritates me when you think getting back ahead, going to 2-1 on in the first leg, and then within 5 minutes. I mean, it's debate about the first leg one is it comes off his shoulder or his back or whatever, and it does sort of loop in, but he's still getting that run and he's still getting ahead and getting his head on it first. And when we know that's just a lottery, once you get your first contact, it's a lottery in terms of where it drops and who reacts. So that one goes in, but then within 60 seconds, there's obviously that old cliche about that's when you're most susceptible to conceding a goal because you've switched off. It's just unacceptable, I think, from us. So the fact that we've lost the 2 goals, I think, is poor, but just sort of the manner of them and the time of them when we've just managed to get ahead in the game or claw ourselves back into a game and we get sucker punched like that. I think those are really, really avoidable. I don't know about Celtic's new players in terms of their prowess in the air, but I think ultimately it's fine to mark well, and it's fine to get the first header, but we need to think about the second header. We need to think about marking players running into the box. That's what four goals in the PSV games, where I think we lost two set piece goals and 4 goals from spaces in the box, just not taking our man, losing the first point of contact, the ball comes out and there's a goal in. So I think both sides of that we need to get a lot better at starting on Sunday.
Yeah, Billy Brown raises the point. PSV movement was first class all night. I do get that they're a better calibre of team than what Rangers are. There's no doubt about it. But still, there was areas that Rangers can certainly improve upon starting this Sunday. Ryan Stewart just on that. He says, there's no way the coaches are setting us up to have Lammers, Mark de Jong. Players need to take responsibility on the park. Is that a big thing for you, Alan? Maybe mentality and taking ownership and being brave on the park at this moment in time and being more responsible?
Yeah, I think that comes with, experience. It comes with a bit of age. What the Beale you mentioned today, they've made a conceited effort to lower the average age of the team, which in many regards is a good thing. Obviously, there's a lot more. You'd hope there'd be less injuries. You'd hope there'd be more availability. But what you lose with experience is the ability for leaders to organise, to sort of think like a coach on the field. And even those players that that have experience and that are there. There's much been made of Tavernier, his sort of leadership styles that leading by example rather than organising others. Goldson for sure is an organiser, but as we saw, he's done a good game the other night, which was unfortunate. And then you've obviously got the midfielders in there, a lot of young boys as well. So I guess that's the sort of conundrum for the staff as well, is that you want to give them that information that they feel confident enough to alter should they need to. And corner kicks is certainly one of them. When you've got somebody like Jean, a few of the comments we mentioned, marking like glue, absolutely, that's what you'd want in any scenario. But then if you mark him, then they've got Singari, and then they've got somebody else, and they've got somebody else. So it very quickly becomes, well, what if somebody else scores? Who was marking him? Well, we're marking the other three, So it's I guess this is the problem you've got against a team like PSV, who are obviously so talented. Watching a couple of the clips back as well, there's a couple of opportunities in the first half where it was like kamikaze defending. I mean, they're literally in the halfway line with two back. There's these huge oceans of space, and we just couldn't get it through to Matondo. A couple of little passes we just sort of gave up, where I think if we'd have made that a bit more clinical, maybe it puts PSV in the back foot some more, but we just weren't able to do that. So they're able to come forward and attack more, which obviously creates more set plays, which puts us in the back foot. And I just felt that was the theme of the evening, unfortunately, was that we were trying to keep our head above water, and it was only a matter of time.
Yeah, Paul Smith gets in touch, good old friend of the Battle Fever podcast, which is a great podcast. He says, evening, gents. Disappointed there's no transfer deadline day yellow ties on display. Well, there is no transfers, Paul, so there is no yellow ties. So hence why we're talking about the game on Wednesday. And as Ian rightly says, he says, let's move on and talk about the weekend. I've heard enough of the Eindhoven game. Touché, buddy. Adam, Sunday, I think I was speaking to Johnny about this. On Thursday, I'm wanting Michael Beale's team to be aggressive from the off, go right at Celtic. I don't want them to sit back. I want them to go for the jugular immediately. How do you think Rangers will set up, and do you think they will do so?
I think so. How I think we'll set up. I think the manager will probably try and mimic what he had in that last game, the game in May. I think going out with that sort of intensity and that aggression and that maybe not a similar front line, because I think well, obviously some of those players aren't here, but I think we started with Sakala and Matondo, didn't we? We Cantwell in behind. I do still think Matondo pace off the bench might be best, as I said earlier on. For me, I think we're looking at maybe I think the back four picks itself. Butland obviously will be in goals. I would like to see Ryan Jack come back in. I'd like to see Nico Raskin in there as well. And then I guess it's the debate just now for me, certainly in this team, is it John Lundstrom that comes in there and we go slightly more solid, and we have that sort of base there to allow the fullbacks to get higher, to allow the front three to sort of play without that need to come back and support, like Ali mentioned, Danilo was doing. So that's the debate for me. Is it that, or is it Cifuentes, who has had a difficult couple of games, if we're being honest, playing tough roles that maybe don't suit him, or roles that he's not played before. So I think that's a bit of a debate there for me. But Jack Raskin and one of those two would be my midfield three. And then up top, like I said earlier on, I would definitely have Cantwell in behind. I would definitely play Kemar Roofe, and then it's a choice for me between Dessers and Danilo for that other slot. I couldn't quite pick who. I think the manager on what we know so far is probably looking like he would go for Cyril Dessers. For me, I wouldn't be averse to that, provided we get support up to him, provided we get service in there. I think that would be fine. So yeah, I think not quite giving you 11 there. I've maybe given you a 13, but I think that's roughly where I would be in terms of options, in terms of approach. And then you've got guys to come off the bench, like we mentioned there, that can give us a bit more pace and energy maybe later on, depending on how the game goes. I think that's how I would start it.
Yeah. Before we come to you, Ali, comments have been coming in. First of all, Kettle's taking issue, says, "Why does the back four pick itself? It's failed." I'm just trying.
Fair point.
Yeah, it's a fair point, but I'm trying to think who else comes in, to be honest.
Ridvan has been apparently back in training for a while, but hasn't appeared.
Something there, yeah.
Yeah, hasn't appeared. Ben Davies, I think, has been back in for a bit as well, but I doubt he'll throw him back into this game fresh. No. Potential there for Balogun, but again, who for? And then I don't think people have been impressed with Sterling when he's come in as well. Maybe he doesn't give the attacking intent that we need, but maybe he gives a bit of security in there. So yeah, like you said, Derek, by it picking itself doesn't mean that it's absolutely amazing. I think it just sort of picks itself just now because of other issues that we've got.
Yeah, it picks itself, and you just hope that there's no glaring errors as we've seen recently. Gavin Sloan raising the point, evening gents, does this current team have 90 minutes of aggressive attacking football in them? That's a big question, Ali, does it?
I guess the evidence so far would suggest not, but I also think as well, you know, we look at the different types of games. Beale mentioned something today in the press conference as well about that League Cup game being in there and trying to give everyone a chance. I definitely think in a normal season, in a regular situation, you'd want to do that. But I think with so much expectation, maybe he's got to box a little bit clever and saying, okay, this is my team, lads. This is who I'm going with. And I think there's an element of maybe overthinking it. So has there been aggressive attacking football for 8 minutes? Like say no, but do they have it in them? Are they capable of it? Yes, of course. You know, they're again talented enough, fit boys, a lot of young players in there. Certainly a lot of guys out trying to prove themselves. So if there's an opportunity to win over fans, you're 2 or 3 good passes, 2 or 3 tackles away from getting everybody behind you. So there's the opportunity there. I guess this is the big sort of, or the next debate rather is, yes, they've got the ability. Now, do they have the personality? Do they get it? And what that means is, it's great scoring goals against bottom of the league. It'd be lovely for them to play really nice against the mid-table teams. But are you going to show up in this one with a big goal or a big assist or whatever it is? And like I say, I just don't think over the last couple of seasons we've had those players. Or certainly not consistently. There's been big moments, like say Arfield would come on and score now and again, the big games, but not every game. I think that's what we need to get to. Yeah,
Burrow's great TJ says, do they have the battle fever? That is a big question. We'll find out on Sunday when they turn up against Celtic. And interesting question here aimed at you, Alish, by Sean Gray. Is Ali standing up?
Yes, I am. I'm not a sitter down in my office. I like to bounce around and chat on the phone. So, yes, I am.
There you go, a standing up desk. So hopefully that's answered your question, Sean. Adam, then, this game is huge for Michael Beale, isn't it? Is it must win for you? Does he have to win it? Because I know there have been some grumbles from the support that he hasn't won a big game yet. He really needs to win this game, doesn't he?
100%. I think any Old Firm game at home is must win, to be honest, other than obviously if you get to a point where the league is a bit of a formality and you can afford to do whatever you want. But yeah, no, I think it is. I think there's pressure. There's certainly pressure building. There's pressure building on the club, I guess. Obviously going out of the Champions League, I think if most people were realistic enough to think PSV would be quite a bit of a challenge, I think most people would have been happy to drop into the safety of the Europa League if that was a choice. So I'm not sure there's much there, but I think it's just that scar tissue from last year. Another collapse that, rightly or wrongly, the manager wasn't there for, but the sort of Rangers support still remembers that, so it just sort of adds another layer onto it. So I think he's maybe suffering a little bit from doings that happened when he wasn't here, but obviously some of the players were there as well. So it just all sort of adds up to it. But yeah, for me, I think we need a big performance. Been banging on for weeks, probably years, that it's not just about getting a result. We need to move away from that. It's about playing well, playing like a Rangers team. I don't know. Since the manager's come in, I think I can count on one hand the amount of times we've actually went out for 90 minutes and dominated a team and scored a load of goals and goals that we think we should have scored, rather than maybe Tavernier coming up with a worldie or a fantastic bit of skill that you can't really rely on to happen consistently. I think most of them seem to be in Edinburgh. I think we probably had two games against Hibs and one against Hearts, so we went out and played really, really well and dominated a team from the off. I'm not sure that's happened too much in the manager's year. And I guess the question is, do we think we can get away with that throughout a season? I personally don't think so. I think we need to see a massive uptick in it. So for me, it's something that I'll be keeping an eye on and hoping that improves over the next couple of months. But that could all be academic if things don't go to plan on Sunday, and then we maybe come back from the international break and it's a bit of a rocky period again. So yeah, for a couple of reasons, I think it absolutely is must win.
Yeah, he needs a result, doesn't he, Alan? And what's your team headed into this one? Is it attack minded? You look like Adam said, perhaps playing Jack and Lundstrom in there, or who are you trusting to start this one?
I think not having watched a lot of Celtic, but certainly they've changed their shape, so there's maybe not the need to have two midfielders that are maybe going to track runners, which is obviously a big thing when sort of O'Reilly and Hatate were in their pomp last year. You had to basically have two guys that were tracking those runs the whole time. I think we can play a little bit more on the front foot in midfield. So obviously that Raskin's had this sort of strange role, right, where he's sort of deep in phases, but then he's starting to carry the ball a little bit higher. So probably him next to one holding midfielder. I'm not really sold, to be honest, guys, on either Jack or Lundstrom, to be honest, really as a starter. In these games, I think both have good performances in them. Jack probably's got a bit more cachet with the fans. Obviously, he's given his history with the club, so I think that's probably more of an easy one there. But I guess beside that, I think Cifuentes is a terrific footballer, so he'd be definitely in my team. But it's whether we play Cantwell in one of those sort of deeper positions, or whether we play Cantwell in the forward position. So again, figuring the team I would go with, similar to what Adam said earlier, probably Cantwell underneath a strike pair. And again, going with two strikers. Let's see what Celtic centre-backs are made of. Apparently it's younger boys are playing, or newer players, or guys are not in favour. So you're as well trying to expose that. And if that means going 1v1 and maybe missing out the midfield a few times, just testing them out. If their fullbacks are going to keep going high, make it a game in their defensive third. Let's see what they've got.
Yeah. Right, Adam needs to belt away, folks. Thank you very much for coming on, Adam. It's greatly appreciated. Before you go, score prediction for Sunday. Are Rangers emerging victorious?
Yeah, I think we have to. We've got no transfers here. We can't be coming on and saying we're going to get scudded on Friday, can we? So, yeah, I'm going to go 2-1. I'll go nice and cautious. 2-1 Rangers will be my guess for Sunday.
Super stuff. Right, we'll take that happily every day of the week. Right, Adam, thanks for that, and good night, buddy.
No worries. If I miss a signing here and Euan gets all the glory, I'm going to be raging. Speak to you in a bit. Bye.
There we go, Adam Thornton there joining us on the transfer show where there is zero transfers happening. Josh McPake, of course, the news broke just over an hour ago. Rangers have agreed a mutual termination of his contract. He has tweeted to say, just want to thank everyone at Rangers, including the players, the fans, and all the staff that have looked after me all these years. Loved every minute of being at this club since the moment I walked through the doors. Came as a young boy and left a man. Thank you. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up, Ali. But a number of players have headed out the door. Now, I've seen a few comments coming in saying perhaps Rangers were too hasty in selling the likes of Antonio Cholak and Fashion Sakala. Scott Arfield, you mentioned as well there. Do you think that might come back to haunt Rangers? I know I've said in many a show that Čolak for me is a player I would have kept around. He guarantees you goals. He scores goals against teams that play with that low block. I could understand him wanting to play more regularly than what Michael Beale could offer him. Is he one that you might look back on come the end of the season thinking that we could have kept hold of him?
Yeah, potentially, mate. I mean, listen, this is the thing when you come in as a manager, right? You're trying to assert your personality in the team, and it's unfortunate that the managers came in the same season that he's obviously signed. So it happens obviously a lot in football where just simply not your guy. It's like coaching staff, working with other people's coaches. Usually they change that as well. So there's maybe an element here of he's tried to look at strikers that he would want. Doesn't necessarily mean Čolak's a bad footballer. I think you've also got the piece of how you're going to fund that, right? So there was obviously the big thing in the summer there about we need money in to, cover those things. I think this, the conundrum with Čolak for me was always, could he fit into what Beale was trying to do? Probably. But even he wasn't really that consistent towards the end of the year, again, whether it be injuries or been in and out of the team. Some performances were good, some performances were okay. So I think it really just falls onto your preference of what do you like in a footballer, right? If you like players like him, then of course you're gonna want him in your side. It just happened. I think Beale's fell on the side of he'd rather someone else. I don't necessarily think he's a bad footballer. I'm seeing a couple of names coming up there as well. Obviously, about you mentioned Sakala, lads like Hadji. Again, I don't think they're bad footballers. I just think it's a preference thing. He would rather guys with different skill sets, whether it be a bit more engine, a bit more pace. I'm not so sure. I think the Sakala one, to be honest with you, mate, is one where I think he would have went anyway. I would have went for that money. When you hear the sums that he's obviously been. Right. So, you're a footballer for a short period of time. This is a profession. This is what it is. They got to take it. I don't think he would certainly push at the door, but, would he have got in front of Danilo and these boys? Again, I just think it falls into preference.
Yeah. Just a few more minutes before we wrap up when we introduce Euan for the final hour of the show. Ali, the Europa League draw was made earlier on today. Rangers in Group C alongside Real Betis, Sparta Prague and Aris Limassol of Cyprus. What do you make of the draw? I think it's, I don't know too much about the teams in the group, but you would fancy Rangers being in pot one to emerge in one of the top two positions?
I'd hope so. I'd hope so. I think we've taken our beatings, obviously, at the Champions League level last year, and we've had a disappointment this year. But when it comes to a Europa League level, I think we're more than capable enough to compete. I think where we have to be careful as a club is that we don't fall into the trap of, the clubs in the big leagues who sort of see it as, we'll take the money, but we're not that bothered by it. If it works out, great, but we're more concentrating the league. I think you also have to remember the last couple of years, Sailing have been playing sailing when we've done well. The first couple of games, I think the year we got to Seville, right, we lost the first two games.
That's right, yeah.
It was towards the end of the group that we got it back, right, when Van Rotten win. So
I think it was Leon and was it Sparta Prague or Slavia?
Right, there you go. So I think there's opportunities here for us to fall on our face if we don't take this seriously. These are going to be good sides we're playing. So I think they need to take it seriously for sure. But my concern there, to be honest with you, that big thing about rotation is I just don't like this idea of, okay, you rest a guy against this team to play him in this one.
Yeah.
I'd like to see just, here's our best team. Let's go with our best players. And for that, 3-month period, if you're playing Saturday, Wednesday, footballers love playing games, playing in the games. This whole protecting people thing, I struggle with personally. I don't think if your best players are fit, you should be worrying about freshness. You worry about that in the break when that comes. I'd like to see us really, really going after it and playing our strongest team all the time.
Yeah, and just on that, best of British says Derek. Stadium capacities for Europa League was spoken about. Betis 60k, Sparta 80k, Cyprus 11k. Should get a worthwhile allocation in Seville at least. You would like to think so, buddy. The Rangers fans will, as always, travel in their numbers to all those grounds, heading back to Seville as well. Do you fancy going to any of those, Ali? It's a bit of a trek for you, right enough. But any of those trips, if you were to pick one?
I went on a coaching trip years ago to Cyprus, so any opportunity to go back there would be great. The other two, obviously, we've you and I have been to Seville. The other the other venue, I'm not so sure that it'll be as warm a welcome. I had this sort of fever dream this morning about remembering a stadium full of children booing
that was Prague
players,
that was
the
Prague,
Rangers team, which wasn't the best, but no, it's great. It's obviously the Bears always travel in good numbers, so I think it's going to be great for the fans to go over and watch the matches. But hopefully the weather will still be favourable for them. Yeah,
I'd fancy Cyprus myself, but not if it's going to be ridiculous temperatures. But yeah, cracking country over there. Before you go, I'll let you go now, Al. I know you're a busy man. Score prediction for Sunday. How do you see it going?
I think it'll be 2-1 to Rangers. I think Celtic are going to have quality that unfortunately they'll at some point I can see them scoring a goal. But at the same time, so do we. I think we've got attacking options. I think that'll be a story of the game. I think there'll be a lot of chances in it. I'm just hopeful that we can get the first goal and most importantly the last one.
Yeah,
or the winning one.
As long as Rangers win, then I think we'll all be happy with that. Right, Ali, thank you very much for joining us. It's been great having you on.
Appreciate it, mate. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Right, well, substitution, guys. Ali is away, and we're going to bring in Euan Robertson. How are we doing, Euan?
Good. Is the mic working okay?
The mic's working fabulously.
That's an exclusive transfer story late tonight. I finally got a microphone. It's probably as exciting as it's going to get for the next hour, but I've been tuned in since 9 o'clock and fair play to everyone.
What a show! What a brilliant show this has been. I mean, there's been absolutely hee-haw in terms of players coming in, but we've managed to pad it out 2 hours 16 minutes already. We should be getting an award for this, I tell you. But yeah, is there anything we should be looking at with just under 45 minutes to go until the window shuts, Euan? It's looking very unlikely there's going to be any activity at Ibrox, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's going to be none. It's been quite a flat deadline day as a whole, hasn't it? You remember years ago when Jim White in his yellow tie and Sky Sports News, but I mean, even Sky Sports News these days, it's nothing like it used to be. It's got Michael Dawson on the telly now. I don't really care what he's got to say. No disrespect, Michael, but it just seems like a very underwhelming day as well. And I think Rangers did a lot of their business early. That was what Michael Beale planned, so it's no real surprise that bring anyone in. I think it was also interesting that in a centre half area earlier in the transfer window, that guy was Aaron Trusty, wasn't it? Michael Beale spoke about him today. He also didn't name the player, but you can read between the lines. That's who he was talking about. It also links a couple other players. Jonathan Panzo was one, wasn't it, Derek?
Yes.
I
think he's away to Cardiff, is he not?
Yeah, and from speaking to people, a couple of sources, really good sources on that, I don't think the interest ever went as far as it was reported in some places. I know that obviously Ross Wilson's at Nottingham Forest, and I think he speaks to Michael Beale quite regularly. So I think if a player was of interest between the two clubs, it would have came up, and I don't think it was really discussed that in any great detail. And it looked like Trusty was the one.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think he went to Sheffield United, wasn't it? I'm not too sure how much it was. The fee was. I think it might have been in excess of. I think it was like 8 million or something, wasn't it? That Trusty went to Sheffield for. So that's a lot of money for Rangers to be playing. Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin McGuinness just on Panzo says Panzo's a bomb scare. We've dodged a bullet there. I remember speaking to a journalist over in France. He spent a season at, for the life of me, I can't remember who it was. Angers, it might have been, and he said he was a bit rash in his challenges, but I think he matured a fair bit when he went over to England to play Coventry City. He was on loan, of course. So But yeah, Rangers not bringing in a centre half. It means that they'll have Ben Davies there as an option. We haven't seen him yet. Michael Beale, as I touched on earlier on, said he has been training in the last few couple of weeks, but he hasn't felt that John Souttar has done anything wrong to come out of the side. Just I was speaking to Ali and Adam about their team for Sunday, Euan, just before I'm going to flash up the Rangers squad chart and we can go through the positions. But ahead of Sunday, can you foresee many changes from the team that took to the field in Eindhoven on Wednesday night?
I think there'll be a couple. I've just put my team in there. Actually, me, you and Joshua have all put it in for tomorrow morning. So the article in the Rangers Review where we all got our predicted teams, and it's pretty similar between all of us.
Yeah.
I think maybe where I kind of went differently is, the back five picks itself, doesn't it? If Barisic is fit, and then it's when you've got the questions. Raskin's going to play, Cantwell's going to play, and then the rest. It's quite difficult. I'm actually once I finish this podcast, I've got an article to finish off on Kemar Roofe. I've been writing. It's one of those ones you write all week, but I was waiting until obviously the game against PSV, then you wait to the press conference today so I could ask Michael Beale about it. So, in the 8 games so far this season, I think this is quite interesting. Well, I certainly find it interesting. Most people probably don't. He's used 7 different front three partnerships.
Wow.
So it's quite, when you look at it like that.
He doesn't know his best team. That's what that tells me.
Yeah, I said it's like picking names out of a Tombola hat the other day. Do you know what I mean? When it comes to the front three, you'll know who it's going to be. So I think that's quite 8 games and 7 different strike kind of trios, front three. So that tells big time that I don't think he knows his strongest three in that area. So I asked Michael Beale about that today and put the kind of fact to him, and he kind of said, look, it's not ideal, but hopefully as the season goes on, they'll bed down a more consistent front three and they'll build relationships and it'll get stronger. He's wanting to give everybody a chance. And the point that he raised as well, which I included in my question, was the fact that all 6 forwards really have scored so far, but I don't think anyone's convinced. Would you say anyone in the striking options there because it's put their name down as a guaranteed starter? You wouldn't say so.
No, it's Kemar Roofe is still the main man for me, and he starts on Sunday if he's fit. I'm not
crazy.
At
the start of the summer, when all these players came in, if you'd said Kemar Roofe would be the one that everyone picks, and most people would be like,
no chance. Yeah, you'd have got good money on that. I think we'd all written them off after seeing them for about 15 minutes last season. I think somebody commented, they said he had the best shift pattern ever. 15 minutes on, 6 months off, but he certainly started off the season well, looked sharp, and he'd be one of the first names in the team sheet for me on Sunday. Let's get to a few of the comments that are coming in. Ian Dill says, Derek, for 4 years is at the Warrington Birchwood, the branch of the Rangers Supporters Club. Superb. I used to live Birchwood Way. Magic, Ian. Let us know if that's still going on. I know there's a lot of Bears down living in Warrington. Mike Kelly says, listening to the Rangers review while finishing work and popping for a pint on a sunny 32 degrees in Winnipeg. More of this, please, from the Winnipeg RSC. Just rubbing it in there, Euan. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And Jason Hart says, just woke up, Melbourne time. Any big signings? No, is the short answer for that, Jason.
Might as well go back to bed, Jason.
yeah, this is not the show for you if you're expecting signings. But thank you very much for your company all the same. Back to the game on Sunday. Denzel raising an interesting point. Is it going to be a 3 on Sunday? Presumably, does he mean a back 3? I don't think it will be a back 3. A front 3, I think, would be more likely. Although in my predicted lineups, I think I'm trying to remember who I've got now. Roofe, and I think I've got Dessers up there with Lammers in behind, which I can understand how many supporters be thinking maybe it's not a game for Sam Lammers. But can you foresee a front 3 on Sunday, Euan?
Yeah, so I've actually went with, I might as well tell you now, people can still read the article, it would be appreciated, but I went for a front 3 of Roofe, Danilo and Lammers. I dropped Cantwell back. I think Rangers need to go for it on the weekend. I think Celtic are weak defensively. They've had to bring an emergency cover in that Phillips. I think Cameron Carton-Vickers is an excellent centre-back. He's arguably, along with Callum McGregor, Celtic's most important player, and he's not going to be playing, so I think Rangers should go for it. I would drop Cantwell back into the midfield alongside Raskin and Jack, and I'd go with the front 3 of Lammers, Roofe and Danilo. I think have a real go at it. I think Roof deserves to start after his hours display in Dingwall last week. He's obviously rested, wasn't part of the European squad. It's just it's really difficult, isn't it, to pick your who plays up front at the moment, because like we're talking about there, no one's put their hand up, and you could ask 10 fans and they'll give you 10 different combinations. It's really impossible to say. But the pace of Sima and Matondo, I prefer Matondo off of the bench at the moment. But you could argue to start with him as well. It depends what Celtic do with their fullbacks. If it was a Celtic under Ange Postecoglou when the fullbacks tuck in and they invert, that leaves space. But Brendan Rodgers plays slightly differently, so it's difficult. You generally don't know who's going to start up front. So maybe that's a good thing for Rangers, isn't it? Because Celtic won't be able to plan for who they're going to play against, where you're pretty sure that Kyogo's going to start up front for Celtic at the weekend.
Yeah, certainly. Like I say, we've predicted our teams, and as Euan says, folks, it will be on the website tomorrow, so do go and check it out. Joshua has also predicted his lineup. A few comments just with regards to that. Ian raising the point, Derek Cantwell should be slightly deeper with a roaming role for Sunday. I've seen a lot of debate about Todd Cantwell, Euan, and maybe we're not seeing the best of him this season. Can you put your finger on why that might be the case?
It's interesting. He's not scored this season, has he? So no. I think people always look at that, and especially because he was in such good goal scoring form towards the end of last season. It's maybe just his role. I think he's played a number of different roles, and maybe not finding that, building the relationships with players. He obviously didn't get an assist or a goal against PSG, but it was his pass that made the goal for James Tavernier in midweek. It was an excellent sort of innovative chip over the top to Lammers, and just at Logan's point there, I mean, I think Cantwell and Lammers are two players who could work quite well together. They're both quite technical players. They like to pick up pockets of space. I'd like to see them play more often together. I think it's important after the international break. Like, you can't use the excuse anymore of these players have got to gel together, and that that's out the window now. You've got to build relationships between players, and I think you've got to name a more consistent front three, because if you look at defence this season, it's been pretty consistent in selection. It also didn't work at all in midweek, conceding 5 goals in the disaster defensive performance. But yeah, I think Danilo or Dessers is probably the big selection dilemma there. Who starts up top?
Yeah, Ian Thompson with a point says Roof, Danilo and Lammers sounds good to me, but Beale will play Dessers. Certainly Cyril Dessers has been getting the nod of late. Right, I'm going to just fire up the squad chart, folks, so do bear with me a little second while we'll bring this up here. It's just uploading. Let's just take a wee bit of time just to get it up here. There we go. So we'll add this to the screen here. So this is the Rangers squad chart that Joshua kindly created for us earlier on today. It shows you the Rangers squad in detail as it stands at 26 minutes past 11 with 34, just under 34 minutes of the transfer window remaining. So this looks like what Rangers squad will be come a minute past midnight. So we'll start off in goal, Euan, Butland, McCrory and McLaughlin. McCrory's an interesting one. We've discussed this on a video before where there was murmurings that teams were looking to prize him away from Ibrox with the lure of first-team football. We know that Man United were credited with an interest as well. It looks like he's staying put. I thought he would have Michael Beale might have used him as a cup goalkeeper, but he never used him against Morton. But those 3 goalkeepers, quite happy with that. Of course, Kieran Wright's there as well.
Yeah, the goalkeeping department's fine. That's probably one of the pitch that few people would have any sort of question marks over. There's good depth there. I think Ross McCrory, Robbie McCrory's a very good number 2 at this level, and John McLaughlin is just essentially there for training purposes, isn't he? Warm-ups and whatnot, I don't think he'll see any game time this season. But yeah, I mean, goalkeeping department, there's no question marks over that. I think from my point of view so far, Jack Butland's easily been the best signing of the summer.
By far.
Yeah, I don't even think it's close. I don't think you find anyone who would disagree with that statement. He looks so assured. I like how he speaks as well. He speaks excellently. Just coming off his line and claiming things. He's made a couple of big saves. If it wasn't for him in midweek, the score could have got really ugly I thought he kept the score. It wasn't respectable. It was almost mildly respectable.
It could have been Liverpool levels if it wasn't for him.
Yeah, easily. So goalkeeping department's absolutely fine.
Yeah, left back, of course, we've got Ridvan Yilmaz and Borna Barisic. Dujon Sterling and Adam Devine can play there as well. We'll just cover the full-backs together. Barisic, he's been. I've got no qualms with Borna Barisic this season. I think he's been steady. He's been a steady 6-7 out of 10. Ridvan, we've not seen anything of him really. Had a howler in that pre-season friendly you were at in Hoffenheim, Euan. Since then, he's been out injured. He has come back. He's back in training. There's still doubts for me whether the manager fully trusts him to play at left back. He did touch on this in his press conference earlier today. We all thought that Borna, after limping off in midweek, would be missing for a bit of time. However, he's going to be back for the Celtic game on Sunday. Any concerns over the full-back positions?
Left back, I think it's still a little bit of a concern. I think most people thought that Yilmaz would be the starting left back going into the season based off his form post-split. But I think Barisic has done fine this season. He's got 4 assists. A number of them have been quite important times as well. You think about the first goal at Ross County, the ball in for Danilo against Livingston when the game was 1-0 and it was at getting to the closing stages at Ibrox, getting a little bit nervy. It was also the most important one was against Servette for James Tavernier. But long term, Borna Barisic isn't the answer at left back. Could Ridvan Yilmaz be the answer at left back? I'm not overly convinced in Yilmaz. I know a lot of people think he's a good prospect. Defensively, I've got major question marks over Yilmaz, and he needs to start playing regularly. Fitness is also a concern with Yilmaz. That's an area that needs to get addressed next summer. With Barisic's contract situation, he's only got a year left. You're not overly concerned about that because he only cost £1 million. He's been a good servant. He's getting to that age, so I think it's a case where you can just let him.
Yeah, you're happy him running it down.
Yeah, you're fine. Maybe keeping him until the end of the season, then addressing it next summer. So I think there's still question marks there. Right back is a little bit more comfortable with because James Tavernier's offensive numbers are ridiculous for a fullback. He will always be criticised for his defensive work, and I think that's legitimate. Some of those criticisms, and also I had big hopes over Dujon Sterling when he signed. I don't think he's hit the heights yet. He's only had cameo appearances off the bench, but I still think that he's a run in the side. I don't think he looked particularly great against PSV, but it's early days. He's not even had. I don't think he's only had one start, hasn't he, against Morton in the cup? And I thought it's probably the game which doesn't suit his skill set the most because he's better defensively than he is attacking, and obviously against Morton, it was offensive work he had to do. So, there's no point making judgments on Dujon Sterling yet. I think he's a good talent. He's got good pedigree, and I'm pretty comfortable with the right back situation.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good acquisition, Dujon. Centre back is an area of concern for me, Euan. Let's run through the players that we've got there. Goldson, Balogun, King, Suter, Davies, Yefeko. Davies, we know. Stoke failed in an attempt to loan him. Leon King. It was reported, of course, we told you that a number of English Championship and League One clubs were keen on bringing him down south on loan. However, none materialised, so he will stay put as well. But that is an area for me where I thought after Wednesday night, Rangers would look to bring in at least one body in the centre-back position just to strengthen it. They haven't done so. When they come up against teams a la Celtic on Sunday, they will look to exploit that back line, which looks ropey at this moment in time. The centre-backs is... How are you feeling with regards to those 6 centre-backs going into the season? Well, going into Sunday and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as 4, to be honest, Derek, because I don't think Yefko and King will feature much if all this season. So I look at it as 4. And ideally, I think we'd want a bit stronger there. With Balogun coming in, everyone knows what he can do. He can be reliable, but again, he's not a long-term option.
No.
And then there's also the fitness issues around John Suter, and to be fair, Ben Davies' fitness record since joining Rangers has been ropey at best. I think Davies gets a slightly hard time sometimes in terms of, I think Adam made the point earlier, I was listening and I agree wholeheartedly with what he said. I think John Souttar this season's made quite a lot of individual mistakes that have led to goals.
Yeah.
And I think if that was Davies, he would get judged a little bit more harshly there. So I don't mind Davies as much as some people do. I think that one bit, not credit as much, but one thing I'd give to him last season was he didn't get to play that regularly with Connor Goldson. I thought some games they played together, they looked okay. But it was a Celtic game, I think, for Davies, wasn't it, at Parkhead? Where I thought
the two errors. Him and Souttar had an error in them each and gave away goals, didn't we?
Yeah, I think Davies had a really poor game there, and that's maybe kind of tinted the sort of
narrative as well. I think there was a Kyogo goal, I'm sure, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Where he didn't cover himself in glory. But I'm like you, and I think he is singled out at times, Ben Davies. I'm just concerned that those centre-back pairings, and like you say, if an injury is picked up, Souttar we know he's had injury problems in the past. Can he last a whole season without sustaining any sort of injury? It remains to be seen, but that is certainly the weak point for Rangers at this moment in time is that back line. I know a few comments have come in saying perhaps Rangers should be looking to adopt that back three, and that may be a better way to go about it. But listen, that is going to be the centre-backs that Rangers will have, folks.
You always talk about that, Derek, quite a lot. He talks about wanting to go to a back three all the time.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's a case of whether he doesn't think they've had the personnel in to do that. Davies has been injured quite a lot this season as well, so he's not been fully fit. So do you look at a back three of Goldson, Souttar and Davies? I mean, then you're really stretching it in terms of if one of them gets injured, who comes back into there. Yeah. Obviously, John Lundstrom's a right centre-back option as well. You've seen that quite a lot. Also under Gio van Bronckhorst, Michael Beale's done it a few times as well. So, I mean, I don't think the centre-back situation is ideal. I think you'd want one more in there and, maybe a King going out on loan. But it depends on injuries as well. Yeah. I mean, the free market agencies is still available, but I don't really see Rangers going down there. I think it's well documented that Ben Davies wasn't overly keen on leaving Rangers this summer. And do you see on that? I think that's kind of been what we've kind of been saying all summer, that he wasn't too keen on leaving. I think people look at football sometimes and they see a lot of things on the pitch, but you've got to remember that these players have personal lives and family situations as well with players that they've got other things to consider about just leaving the club and leaving Glasgow. So yeah, I'd cut Davies a little bit of leeway there in terms of without going too much into it, but it's not ideal with centre-back situation. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I'm just, while you were speaking there, I'm on Transfer Market looking at free agents to see potential players that are available should Rangers be looking in that market. So I'll report back shortly, folks, once I have a little scour of that. In midfield then, we've got the midfield for me. I think we were on a video before you, and that is not a concern for me. Rangers get plenty of options in there. Nico Raskin, I know that he's not been at his greatest in the last step, well, especially the PSV game in midweek. Ryan Jack expect to come in for Sunday. Young Bailey Rice, I hope we'll see a bit of game time this season as he continues his development. You've got Todd Cantwell in there. Kieran Dell, of course, has got a knee niggle, which we hope is not serious. Jose Cifuentes, who had a bit of a nightmare against PSV, although I don't think right midfield is not his position. There's no doubt about it. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to get up to speed in terms of learning from his teammates, learning the style of play, and embracing this living in Scotland for a start. He's coming from Los Angeles, where he spent a short period of time from Ecuador, and then he's came over to Glasgow. So for him, I think there's a bit of settling in to do. John Lundstrom, I think last with first leg of the PSV game, he came on and done a job. I think he'll do a job pretty much like Barisic, of course, in the final year of his contract. Quite happy with him running it down. I wouldn't be entirely sure about offering him a new deal necessarily, but certainly think that he'll do a job for Rangers in that midfield. And then you look at the attacking midfield options. Plenty there. Michael Beale did touch on it in his press conference earlier about possibly signing a Ryan Kent replacement. He touched on Rabi Matondo and Tom Lawrence, who will be back, and he says should be able to start games after the international break. Scott Wright, who we thought was heading out the door, is still here, and Sam Lammers is there as well. So midfield, is there any... You quite happy with the midfield options that Rangers have at this moment in time, Euan?
Yeah, I think Rangers have got really good options in that midfield area. I don't think that's a position that they need to strengthen at the moment. I think it would look at a possible wide player in that left centre back, left back. Yeah, I think there's good strength in there as well, and I agree with most things you say. It's worth noting as well that I'm looking at Scott Wright here in particular, could still go during this window, because the Turkish market, I believe, is extended longer than the other European markets. So I know there's certainly interest from Turkey and Scott Wright. Obviously, the Saudi market's open as well. There was that, there's that story as well. But if you're looking at Turkey for Scott Wright, and that could still happen in this window, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. You usually do. So that he could still go out the way. But yeah, midfield I think is quite good. I'm a big fan of Bailey Rice as well. I know you are, Derek. It'd be good to get him. He's only 17, I believe, so it's don't get too far ahead. But against some teams at Ibrox, if Rangers are winning by a few goals, then get him on, get some minutes. He plays like watching Bailey Rice play football. It's not as if he's a 17-year-old. He's so composed in the ball. He plays with a maturity beyond his years, and I think he's a cracking prospect. And I think the last thing you want to happen is that Rice doesn't get the opportunities that he thinks he should get in a couple of years' time, and then he leaves and goes down to England and enjoys an academy down there. So I think you've got to give him minutes. It's important to play him when it's right, not to put them in too early. But Bailey Rice is someone I'm really excited about, and I think there's kind of good different profiles of midfielders in there as well. So I think Rangers are quite well stocked in that midfield department. You look at the two nailed-on starters. If he's used the attacking midfielder as part of the front three, Cantwell and Raskin are nailed-on starters, and it's the other one from that group who joins them.
Yeah, totally. I've had a little scour of the free agent transfer market. Axel Tuanzebe is available. Ditto Phil Jones. Or here's one, Jack Simpson, who's just been released from Cardiff. Bring him home is what I say. Give him a second chance. So yeah, Jack Simpson available on a free transfer. Cue the comments that will come in. Absolutely furious with that suggestion. Anyway, let's move on to the forward line. And this is another problem area. Well, an area of slight concern for me, Euan. I'm not entirely convinced that Rangers have recruited well here based on what we've seen so far. Cyril Dessers, Abdallah Sima, Danilo and Kemar Roof. Of the four, Kemar Roof is the best striker Rangers have at their disposal. We've talked at length about Danilo, and likewise Jonny did so with Stevie and Chris earlier on. We'd like to see more of him. I can understand why some supporters are scratching their heads at why Rangers have paid out a substantial amount of money and he's sat on the bench. Cyril Dessers has been given the nod. Can the two work together? That is a big question. When I spoke to a couple of Dutch journalists who, when Rangers were signing Danilo after signing Dessers, they could not understand why they were going for Danilo as well after bringing Cyril Dessers in. They said it was either one or the other, but Rangers have got the two of them there. I think Michael Beale, as you touched on, Euan, he's still to settle on a preferred front line, isn't he?
Yeah, 100%. It would be a slight concern, I think, that Danilo's came in for, I believe, to be in the region of £5 million, and he's not played against in the two biggest games of the season against PSV.
Yeah,
you bring in these players. Spending £5 million at Rangers is a big investment. So for him not to play those two games, it's a bit of a worry for me. You could frame it in terms of, he's still settling in, but how long do you have to give players to do that?
Yeah, I'm not buying that. He was playing pre-season games for Feyenoord. He's fit and rearing to go. And
he didn't even play against Ross County as well. So, you thought maybe you give him a start him against Ross County and see how he does. And if he impresses, you put him in again. I don't really get it. I put him in my team for Sunday. I thought Dessers had started to show a little bit of encouragement in recent weeks, but I thought he was poor, like everyone was really against PSV. I think the chance where Golden hit that really good diag ball through to him, Dessers in the first half against PSV, I thought it was a really good opportunity. That if that was a Sima or a Matondo with more pace, he could take the ball down. Then I think it was a really good opportunity. And yeah, it's interesting to look at the striking options. I'll ask you a question and put you on the spot, Derek. Would you have taken Lawrence Shankland over someone like Dessers? Because that'd probably be roughly about the same fee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we're talking about that today at the press conference. We're not to Michael Beale, just amongst ourselves with Jonny and Stevie.
Yeah. I think Lawrence Shankland for me, and I know he sparks a bit of debate amongst the fan base, but you'd get you guaranteed goals in the Scottish League. I touched on Cholak earlier. There was a comment came in, Rangers will regret selling Cholak. If you can get someone that's going to guarantee you 20 goals a season, then get them in. At this moment in time, you can't get you looking at Cyril Dessers and Danilo. You can't put your hand on your heart and say they're going to get you upwards of 20 goals, and you're looking for that from both with the outlay that you've spent. And at this moment in time, we remain to be convinced. But Lawrence Shankland would have been a good signing for me. I stand by that. I know that there was teams in Saudi Arabia you touched on earlier in their transfer window shuts later on. I think Frankie McAvoy did say that this team's interested in taking Shankland, which would be a great move financially for him. But but would you be you on the Shankland train? Would you have been? Would you fancy him coming into Ibrox in some way, shape, or form?
I'm a bit torn on it. I mean, I don't think he's a first choice number 9, but if he's going to be a backup, he's a great backup option. I think he would have been. It's just an interesting one. We're trying to kill time here a little bit with no transfers coming in, so I just put that one out there because it's
see, the thing is, it sparks a wider debate. There's players in the Scottish Premiership. There's been gems there that Rangers have missed out on down the years. I'm going way back to James MacArthur when he was coming through at Hamilton Accies. Rangers should have been all over that one. They're not the only club, of course. Celtic should have been snapping up players as well, where they go, they leave, they join the teams down south, or they join teams abroad. I know that Jonny likes to go on about Lewis Ferguson. He's never been on Rangers' radar, and now you've got big teams in Italy sniffing about him. I think that is another missed opportunity. But I think in the wider scheme of things, Rangers should be looking, as Walter did when he was in charge, looking to snap up some of the best talent in the domestic game.
Josh Doig was the one for me. They got away. I think he's an excellent left back, and that's a position that I'm still not convinced about the Rangers. And you look at Josh Doig's possible trajectory there. Big clubs are going to be sniffing about him in a few years, and he was one I felt that certainly got away. I'm torn over Shankland, but yeah, I think he does kind of guarantee you goals from what he's done at Hearts. And I actually think that he's all around plays maybe a little bit underestimated as well. I think he was maybe he was at Ayr United and Dundee United. He was seen as like a poacher and just a goal scorer, but I do think he's got a little bit more to his game than that. So it's an interesting one. I know he's a Rangers fan as well, so I think that obviously helps with.
I can't remember when he was linked first, but I think he might have been at Ayr or Dundee United, and at that time I was thinking you need to get this lad in. He's a goal machine. But at the time, Rangers never made a move. But it's certainly one that sparks debate. Let's get this graphic off and get to a few of the comments that are coming in, because there is loads of them. First of all, nice few words from Dublin Bears. He says, lads, thanks for the show. This is fantastic. My daughter Hannah is loving it as well, and she loved Cholak. Didn't we all, buddy? I was a big Cholak fan as well, and thank you very much for your kind words and tuning in at the ungodly hour on a Friday night. People are usually out sinking a few beers, Euan, or what have you. What are you normally doing on a Friday evening?
I'm partial to a couple of beers. There's a few good pubs around where I stay on a Friday night, so I'm keeping behaved tonight. I've got some work to do tonight as well. It was a strange day because I was at the press conference earlier, so I didn't start at 9 o'clock this morning. I started later in the day and I worked all the way through. So press conference was good as well to get out to that. And obviously the big game on Sunday, day off tomorrow as well. So might go and take a game in round about where I stay in Glasgow. I know Pollock are playing They're in action tomorrow. Scottish Cup. I think it's one of the early rounds of the Scottish Cup. They're playing. Can't remember who they're playing actually, but I'll see who's on around me, and I'll go and watch someone tomorrow.
Yeah, good stuff. Absolutely fantastic. Right, let's get to some other comments. There is a bit of transfer news, but it's not involving Rangers. An ex-Rangers player, Andrew Dallas, has signed for Kelly on loan from Barnsley, says Dave. If you are just tuning in, folks, I know we've titled this the Transfer Deadline Day Live. There is no transfers, so we do apologise for the lack of...
False advertising, Derek, isn't it, really?
It is false advertising. When we first initially thought about the idea of doing a mammoth 3-hour show, we were expecting a bit of a frenzy come the end of the window, but unfortunately it has not been the case. But thanks to each and every one of you for staying with us over the course of the programme. It's much appreciated. Just on the Jack Simpson bring him home brigade, the Rangers Grouch says, I would rather have Marv Simpson at centre back, so not having Jack Simpson there. So yeah, he wasn't much of a success, although he appeared, him and Namdi Ofabor of course joined just at the tail end, back end of the 55 season. He played against Celtic, if you remember, when Rangers thrashed Celtic. Was it 4-1 at Ibrox? I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments, but played as part of the centre-back pairing alongside Connor Goulton, if I'm not mistaken. This is what it's late, and we're trying to find topics of discussion, Euan. So
20 minutes ago, 20 minutes. I just seen on the TV there that it's purely hypothetical, but just to keep the conversation going, that Rob Holding went to Crystal Palace for $4 million. Obviously, his wages will be sky high and out the here for Rangers. But look at that £4 million. You look at that kind of that market. I don't even know if he's any good. He's decent. He's a Premier League player, but
he'd be an upgrade. He would be an upgrade.
His wages, he'll be on what Arsenal, $100,000 a week. The wages down there.
He'd be on a lot of money.
Are crazy, yeah.
Yeah, he'd be on a lot of money, but that'll be a good bit of business, I think, for Crystal Palace, who have got Roy Hodgson still there. He must be 805 years old, but still doing the business there at Palace. Here we go. Right, I do apologise in advance, folks. Alan McConnell has raised this point, so I am going to address it. It is your show, so here we go. He says, I would also take Morelos back on a 12
we should just end the show now on that.
Alfredo Morelos, the last we heard, he was jetting over to Turkey, actually contacted by a Turkish journalist over there who contacted me before about Ryan Kent, asking me for a bit of inside info on Alfredo, but it now appears that Fenerbahce have decided to turn down the chance to sign him over attitude concerns, according to a media publication over there in Turkey. They've given up on the player's transfer. He's been described as having an aggressive attitude, which the club did not want to take a risk on. So I'm sure Ryan Kent is breathing a sigh of relief, not having to share a dressing room with Alfredo Morelos again. Alfredo, though, Euan, would you take him back?
No.
There you go. It's easier that if we're getting the 2019-20 Alfredo Morelos, then in a heartbeat, he's head and shoulders above anyone at the club. However, I think the best days of Alfredo are behind him, unfortunately. It tells you all you need to know. He's still without a club at this point in time. I don't know where he's going to end up, in all honesty. I hope he finds somewhere where he's happy, where he can rediscover his love of football, and he can be banging the goals in again. It's sad to see what's happened with Alfredo, because back in the day, as I mentioned, after that season, he was being linked with big money moves to, I think, Nice, were one of the clubs quoted. There was teams in Spain as well, but he's now clubless.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I bet Rangers now are wishing they'd cashed in when they could have. I think also when it was Gerrard at the start of the club, when those big bids were rumoured to be coming in, and by all accounts Gerrard was really keen to keep him, and ultimately that's the main reason why they did. But yeah, look, he was, I think history looked kindly on Alfredo Morelos. When he was fit and firing for Rangers, he was an excellent player. But I mean, towards the end there, his attitude and his professionalism it wasn't on for a professional football player, and that's why clubs ultimately haven't went for him this summer, because people talk in the football industry. It's quite a small industry in terms of the elite level of the game. So a lot of people know each other, and it's a shame what's happened to Morelos. I thought Fenerbahce would have been a good move for him, but that looks like it's fallen through. So, but I felt Morelos should not be coming back to Rangers. I was listening to a well-known radio talk show. I think it was either Monday or Tuesday. You know what I'm going to say. So he was been linked to another club in Scotland. So it definitely has crazy season when it comes to the transfer window.
Absolutely bonkers stuff. Ian Dill says Alfie will end up with Drumchapel Amateurs. Good team, by the way. Many a great player that came through Drumchapel, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes. The Rangers Grouch says take Alfie back on a pay as you play. I doubt that's going to happen at any point in time. Just moving away slightly from Alfredo, JT raises a point here, Euan. Any word on Stephen Davies? Of course, he was been recovering from that ACL injury. Do we have any update? Is there any murmurings? You're at the training centre regularly every week. Any sightings of Stephen Davies? Can we expect to see him back at any point soon?
I think Davies he's still at the club. I think he's back. I think he's in the training centre quite a lot of the time. I want to make sure I get my words right here, so I'll just double check. He was talked about last week's press conference, which I was at, but it obviously wasn't the broadcast section of it. So basically, the broadcast media go first. So we're including that with like Sky, Clyde, STV, etc. Then the papers speak to Michael Beale differently. I think Beale spoke last week about he's actually thought in the first PSV game that Stephen Davies would be quite good to have in that game because he can kind of calm things down. But
on the post for a start, we'd avoided a goal.
I want to feel that he's stepping up his rehabilitation. I think he might be back doing a little bit of work on the grass, not with the group or anything like that, but I think he might be back doing a little bit of running and stuff like that. So that's great to hear. I know he's at the gate. He goes to the games. He sits with the other Rangers players, even though technically he's not contracted to the club at the moment. His deal ended at the end of last season. I think it's a case of there's obviously such a big respect between the club and Davies that it's a very it's an easy one to do, and they'll keep going and try and get him back. It'd be great to see him back in the pitch, even if it's once or twice towards the end of the season, wouldn't it? Give him the send off that he deserves.
Listen, I've got my doubts if we'll see him back in a Rangers jersey and the guy competitively again. I know there was reports that he was undergoing another operation in the press a few days ago as well. Just wish him all the best. Of course, he's been a fantastic servant to Rangers, 38 years of age now. Such a shame that he suffered that knee injury, because I think he, like McGregor, would have had a real proper send-off come the end of the season. But it's hopefully he gets back to some sort of fitness, Stephen Davies. There was a point that was raised. I wanted to bring it up. I'm trying to find it. For the life of me, I can't quite find it here. Well, what the show, incidentally, folks, we were due to run until 12:10. I'm wrapping up at 12, and I don't care that there's nothing unless something happens in the next 4 minutes. We're calling time on what has been a mammoth show, the biggest show I think we've ever done here since we launched the Rangers Review transfer deadline show, and there's been no transfers to speak of. The only murmurings, as I mentioned earlier on, Stoke City failing an attempt to loan Ben Davies. Josh McPake has been released from his contract as well, so he is free to sign for another club. In terms of Sunday, how do you see it going? You and the Rangers going to get a result, do you reckon? And how big a match is this for Michael Beale?
They've got to get a result, simple as that. And the importance of this result was heightened by the fact that when they do this, the SPFL do this on purpose. It's so that the international break comes after the Old Firm. So if whatever team wins that, it's positivity for 2 weeks, and if Rangers were to lose at the weekend, then it'd be negativity for 2 weeks. The result lingers on, and a cloud is over there because it's international break. If Rangers can get any sort of win against Celtic, they'll go 2 points clear at the top of 2 points clear Celtic at the top of the table. So in terms of the first section of the season, the first 9 games, not qualifying for the Champions League was hugely disappointing. I don't think losing to PSV's any great shame. It was the manner of the victory that wasn't acceptable. But if you look at it, Rangers, if Rangers win on Sunday, then they're still in the League Cup, which Celtic obviously aren't. They'd be top of the league. So you'd have to say, given the amount of changes in the squad and the kind of rebuild over the summer, if they go in top of the league after that first stretch of games, I think it's been a decent start to the season.
Yeah,
so if they lose, it's been a really bad start to the season. So
I shudder to think what will happen if they lose. I shudder to think what the reaction will be. Michael Beale needs this win. Tell you what, Brendan Rodgers is under pressure as well. They've had a bit of an iffy start. They have added to their squad, and they're feeling a lot better heading into this game. Prior to Wednesday, I was very confident heading into Sunday, Euan. However, it's just the manner of the defeat. I don't mind. I was all for one. If they left everything out on the pitch and they just came up short, then fine. However, it's the manner of the defeat. They were absolutely battered in that second half. And I know Michael Beale was quizzed on that in the press conference afterwards, where the journalist who posed the question, I'm not entirely sure who it was, said it was a hammering. And he says that was your words. It was a hammering. And we've seen last season in the Champions League after hammerings that they struggled after that. So that's a slight concern for me coming off the back. What impact will that have on the players mentally? I'm hoping it doesn't have any impact whatsoever and Rangers come out all guns blazing on Sunday. But can you see that happening?
They have to. It's simple as that. Rangers need to win. Michael Beale needs this win as well. Yep. There's a lot of talk about beating Celtic last season, the 3-0 Ibrox game, and to me, it didn't really mean that much because the league was over. It was important to put in a marker and things like that. But this is a game that matters, isn't it? I think it's just going to, the reaction, depending on this result, is going to swing, from one end of the spectrum to another, isn't it? If it'll be carnage if Rangers lose this game. It'll be, the next 2 weeks won't be too enjoyable to write about. But conversely, if they win it, then I think you need to be positive about the start to the season. Rangers are heavy favourites to win the League Cup. They go in at top of the league. Obviously, Scottish Cup doesn't get played yet, so I think all hinges in this game, isn't it? It's probably one of those games that no Rangers fan will enjoy watching because there's so much on it. You can't really enjoy those games. And
I really enjoy watching an Old Firm game. In all honesty, I very much enjoy the result if it's a positive one. But usually your stomach's in knots watching it. So it's just one of those ones, isn't it? It's all about the outcome, and Rangers need to come out on top and go into that international break top of the league. Certainly, it's going to be an absolute cracker at Ibrox on Sunday. Score prediction, Euan, before we wrap up. Are they going to? Ali and Adam are going for a 2-1 win. What say you?
I'm going to go 3-2 to Rangers. Wow. I think both defences look
ropey,
not great at the moment. Celtic, I don't know who they're going to play at centre back. I don't think Nat Phillips is fit, is what I'm hearing. So they've got him from Liverpool on loan, but he's not fit right now. So you're looking at maybe Scales and the other new boy. I can't even pronounce his name. So it's there to win for Rangers. Rangers need to win this game. It's so you can't overestimate how important the game is. So it needs to be a 3 points. I don't think anyone from Rangers persuasion will care if it's the scrappiest 1-0 and a terrible performance. 3 points is all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely agree. That is the window now closed, folks. Thank you to everyone for joining us on this mammoth transfer window show. It's been greatly appreciated, even though we've not brought you any transfer news to speak of. Ian Thompson says, I'm out, can't stay awake any longer. Thanks for tonight, lads. Well done. Well, thanks very much for joining us. World's greatest DJ as well. Enjoyed tonight's show, so thank you, buddy. And Malt Whiskey says, well done, lads. 3 hours of hee-haw. We managed to pad it out. God knows how we did. So we're going to wrap it up 8 minutes early. I'm sure that'll be okay with many of you. It's time to go to bed, I think, after speaking for the best part of 3 hours. Thanks to Jonny for kicking off the show alongside Stevie, who's away to Florida on Monday after the Old Firm game. Hopefully he's on that plane with a little smiley face heading over to see Mickey Mouse and the likes. And Chris also for joining us, decked out in Alex Higgins style.
He's the smartest man in the journalism game, Derek. Whenever I'm up at Auckland Highway like today, he's always kitted out in in a full suit. I should probably take some lessons catching up in a t-shirt and a pair of jeans and trainers all the time. I go for the more relaxed, modern approach, but Chris is dapper as ever, so it was great to see him. And fair play to everyone who's watched for the whole. I wonder if anyone's watched from the start to the finish. Fair play to everyone that's sat and listened to the thing. I think we've covered loads of good things as well, Derek. We've kept it going.
Yeah, we have done it. It's been fantastic, and it's down to you guys for keeping it going and firing in lots of interesting points and comments. Just to give you a heads up, obviously Sunday we'll have all the usual pre-match and post-match videos. I'll be on with the pre-match when the teams come out, of course. Then we'll do the post-match reaction. Hopefully we're reporting on a Rangers victory, so hopefully you can join us for that. Good night, everybody, and we'll speak to you on Sunday. Bye for now.